Now here on ITV, it's Good Morning Britain.
Good morning, Britain. Breaking her silence, the Queen finally responds to Harry and Meghan's bombshell interview, but questions the couple's version of events. Breaking overnight, a police officer has been arrested over the disappearance of Sarah Everard in South London. We are live at the scene with the latest. Fighting fake news, Facebook's new campaign to help users spot misinformation online. But should the social media giant be doing more to block misleading and abusive posts before they appear? We'll ask their vice president after 7. And Christmas at Downton. It may be 9 months away, but Richard has news of the most highly anticipated films of the festive season.
After a lot of dry weather lately, today it turns cloudy, wet and windy, and it's that weather that wins out as we head through the rest of the week. All the details of that and more coming up on Good Morning Britain.
Wednesday, 10th of March 2021. Live from Television Centre in London. This is Good Morning Britain with Ranbir Singh.
A very good morning to you. It is 6 o'clock. We're with you all the way through until 9. As usual, Susanna will be here with me from 6:30. We will be talking about what's on your mind. I know what's on your mind. We will get to it. But first, let's get to our top story. Well, the Queen says claims of racism within the royal family will be taken very seriously, but handled in private. The statement from the palace follows allegations made by the Duke and Duchess of Sussex during their interview with Oprah Winfrey. Our chief correspondent, Richard Gaisford, is at Buckingham Palace. So the Queen has responded. It was a short statement. What are we reading into it?
Well, we get to hear from the Sussexes out in Los Angeles, the two people it's squarely aimed at. There has been some praise, Ranbir, for the conciliatory tone the statement strikes, the fact it doesn't escalate the war of words. But criticism, too, that the investigation it heralds is actually going to be private. We might not actually get to the bottom of what was happening and what was said. About 60 words in this statement or so. 3 words, though, the most important. Recollections may vary, says the Queen. An acknowledgement that even within her own family, who said what to whom, when, people have a different view on that. And certainly that is the case for Meghan and Harry. Remember, in that interview, Meghan talks about concerns and comments being raised about Archer's skin colour during her pregnancy that were relayed to her from Harry. But Prince Harry himself saying actually there was a comment that shocked him at the start of the relationship before they were married.
More on a story that had a lot of people talking.
Her Majesty breaks her silence.
The Queen responds.
49 million people worldwide, we now know, tuned into that bombshell interview, and it's still making international waves. But Buckingham Palace took its time to respond, finally releasing a statement yesterday saying the whole family was saddened. The issues raised, it went on, particularly that of race, are concerning. While some recollections may vary, they're taken very seriously and will be addressed by the family privately.
Statement is very conciliatory, which doesn't surprise me at all because conciliation has always been one of the great themes of the Queen's reign.
They have also put in a line, some recollections may vary, and I think that is there deliberately, perhaps, just to sow, I think, a bit of a seed of doubt about some of the things that they said.
The interview's repercussions could be long-lasting. A former Australian Prime Minister said it strengthens the case for his country to become a republic. Prince Charles got on with the work of the family firm with this visit to a London vaccine centre yesterday.
Sir, can I ask, what did you think of the interview?
Making it clear that further responses to this crisis will stay resolutely private. Richard Gaisford. Good morning, Britain.
Meanwhile, the regulator Ofcom has launched an investigation relating to comments made by Piers on the show about the interview with Meghan and Harry. The watchdog received more than 41,000 complaints about his remarks on Monday. A serving Metropolitan Police officer has been arrested overnight in connection with the disappearance of Sarah Everard. The 33-year-old has not been seen since last Wednesday after visiting a friend in Clapham in southwest London. Tom Barton is there. This is an incredibly serious development. Tom.
It is, Ranbir, yes. It was yesterday evening that police arrested that man at an address in Kent in connection with the disappearance of Sarah Everard. They also arrested a woman on suspicion of assisting an offender. 33-year-old Sarah was leaving a friend's house in Clapham last Wednesday about 9 p.m. It's thought that she crossed Clapham Common and headed in this direction, walking home to Brixton and wearing a distinctive green coat. The police say they are doing everything they can to find her. The search has included local drains and a local pond. But perhaps one of the most alarming new developments is that man who was arrested was in the Met Police. In a statement, Met Police Assistant Commissioner Nick F. Graves said, "The arrest this evening is a serious and significant development. We will continue to work with all speed on this investigation, but the fact that the arrested man is a serving Metropolitan Police officer is both shocking and deeply disturbing." Sarah, who was shown earlier that night on CCTV, was last seen near this very spot, filmed by a doorbell security camera. As of this moment, where she is and what happened remain a mystery.
Tom, thank you. Next, Britain could be hit by another wave of coronavirus if lockdown measures are lifted too quickly, according to England's chief medical officer. The warning from Professor Chris Whitty comes amid concerns this morning that ethnic minority groups are at a higher risk of the illness and of death with the virus because of the UK's what he called colour-blind vaccination programme. Nick Dixon is at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Birmingham. Nick, a number of doctors are saying ethnic minority groups should be prioritised for the vaccine. Of course, it's been based on age, hasn't it, so far?
That's right. Morning, Ranveer. This is coming from healthcare professionals at the Royal College of Medicine, and what they're saying this morning effectively is that the vaccine rollout as it stands is just completely disregarding the impact and the severity and the seriousness of the pandemic on ethnic minority groups. And what they feel is that there should be a much more sort of flexible approach around the country at local level in terms of getting people who need to be onto the priority list there and to get the vaccination itself, and not just focus on the age group category, which is happening, as you say, at the moment. Many people, as we know, in the BAME community are really very sceptical about the vaccination and having the vaccination for a number of different reasons, that they may well feel that it's just not to be trusted, that it's not effective, it's not safe, or indeed that there aren't enough people within their community, trusted local voices, actually vouching for the safety of the vaccine.
The vaccine programme is going well, but I think early on in the programme we should have targeted high-risk groups such as ethnic minorities. I think if they'd been seen as a priority, they would have taken the vaccine up at a higher rate, which would have helped them and helped the wider population as well.
As you were saying earlier, Ranveer, the UK's Chief Medical Officer, Chris Whitty, has been talking about another surge of the virus later in the year and his concerns that it may have the impact that it will have on vulnerable groups. He said that surge is inevitable and that his worry is that it will impact, of course, on those people who haven't had the vaccine, but also where the vaccine simply hasn't worked or been particularly effective.
Nick, thank you. Now, across the pond, President Joe Biden is preparing to sign a $1.9 trillion relief package to help the US economy recover and reduce poverty in the wake of the pandemic. It'll mean most Americans will receive a payment of up to $1,400 each. Our North America correspondent, Noel Phillips, is in the Bronx borough of New York. Morning to you, Noel. So what's been the reaction there? This is actually quite an impressive lump sum to each person.
That's right. It's been described as historic and transformative. President Biden's COVID relief bill is seen as a light at the end of a very dark tunnel. Hundreds of thousands of people here in America have lost their jobs. Homelessness has increased and many families are struggling to cope at the moment. And let's not forget, this country has one of the worst COVID death tolls. 540,000 lives have been lost. To put that into context, that's the size of 6 NFL stadiums. And we've been talking to people here in New York to try and get a sense of just how much of a difference this bill will make to their lives.
We're from California, it's super expensive, so I know it doesn't, it's not huge, but I'm sure it's going to help a lot of people.
It would mean a lot. I have bills to pay, I have needs that need to be taken care of.
I don't think it actually helps long term. I think long term the best stimulus is getting past this and reopening the economy.
There's people who have kids and there's people who are really struggling, so it is something to look forward to for a lot of people.
Now, the COVID relief bill, as it's known, has already been approved by the House of Representatives as well as the Senate. And that's despite a lot of opposition from Republican lawmakers who just say it's simply too costly. And to put it into context, you said it before, Ranveer, 1.9 trillion. That's 12 zeros for those of you who are counting. Now, all eyes will be on the Senate once again as lawmakers attempt to pass the bill. And when they do, it will be pretty much a momentous occasion for the Biden administration as they try and recover America's crippling economy.
All right, lovely, Noel, and welcome to the team. I haven't been able to say that yet, but it's nice to have you with us on a very quiet week. So thank you for joining us. We'll see you again soon. Right, Facebook is launching a campaign to help users spot fake news. People will be urged to fact-check online content and look up the sources behind the information you're seeing. The scheme will target lies surrounding COVID and the vaccination programme. We're going to be speaking to Facebook's Vice President Steve Hatch about this just after 7. So if you have any questions, do let us know. England manager Gareth Southgate is campaigning to encourage more children out onto football pitches and get active again when restrictions on organised sport are lifted at the end of the month. Jonathan Swain is at St George's Park in Burton-upon-Trent. Jonathan, you've been speaking to Gareth Southgate, haven't you? What's he saying about this initiative?
Morning, Ranveer. Well, a lot of things, really. I should explain where we are this morning. This, as you say, is the national training base for the England squads. Gareth Southgate's office is just behind me. The training pitches where the team train is just over there. And Gareth admits that, look, throughout this pandemic, children have been watching the professional teams play, but now it's their chance at the end of the month when organised sport can happen at a grassroots level to get onto the pitches, not necessarily to become the next England star, but for them to get active, to get out of the house for their health and their well-being. And Gareth Southgate himself has a very busy few months ahead. There's 3 England World Cup qualifiers in March, and then in June, of course, the European Championships begin. And the England boss was telling me yesterday that, look, because of the pandemic, it has been quite problematic to try to get all the players together because of the various restrictions at their various clubs around the country. And as yet, he doesn't really know what players will be available for this very important summer. He's still got his skills and he's kicking off a busy few months. The delayed Euros, it seems, will happen from June, but the England boss admits that the pandemic is making preparations with the team a little difficult.
There's been a lot of restrictions on the players in terms of how we have to live day to day when we're together with England because we're getting people from different clubs.
In a couple of months, the England team will be here preparing for this year's Euros. But for almost a year now, many football pitches around the country have been empty. And that's why the England manager is encouraging children to put their boots on. He's filming coaching videos and encouraging parents to sign up to fun football sessions organised by McDonald's and the English FA.
There's the social part of being with your friends and interacting. There's the health benefits for physical and mental health.
This summer, England have a much anticipated match against Scotland, and he just hopes that fans will be allowed in. Normally, before major tournaments, there's the usual hype of an expectant nation. But this summer, after everything we've all been through, perhaps just enjoyment that it's happening at all. Jonathan Swain, Good Morning Britain.
Right, let's take a look at the weather. Laura has instructed me to ask her about a meteorite? Meteor?
Well,
this has landed, not in this studio, but somewhere else.
No, that didn't land in here, that is for sure.
Well,
now, Ranveer, when it flies through space, it is a meteorite. When it flies through the Earth's atmosphere, it's a meteor. And this is what people saw Sunday evening 2 weekends ago. But when it lands on Earth, it becomes a meteorite. And they have found it. Lots of observations from all over the country meant that they could hone down an area where they thought it was, and they found it in Winchcombe in the Cotswolds. A small piece of black-looking rock. It's a chunk, here we go, and there were several fragments that landed down on Earth. It's exceptionally rare. It's a carbonaceous chondrite meteorite, so exceptionally rare, and it tells us more about the origins of our universe. So that is just incredible. It's now in the hands of the Natural History Museum, who will investigate further, and more things have been falling from the sky. Volcanic activity has really been ramping up in Mount Etna. We've had a lot of eruptions, 10 of them within the last couple of weeks or so. They're expecting another eruption within the next couple of hours, and local towns and villages have been completely covered in ash and soot. And they keep clearing it, but there keeps being more and more and more activity. There's a lot of activity with volcanoes around the world at the moment, and lots of ash falling from the sky. And one that we're closely watching is Iceland as well. They have had hundreds, thousands of tremors within the last couple of weeks. So that is one that we are watching, but they're the scenes that we've seen from Mount Etna within the last couple of weeks, and there'll be more of those through the coming days. The thing that'll be falling from the sky here is rain. It has been a while, but yes, wet and windy weather will dominate as we head through the next few days. You can barely make out the UK here beneath this widespread band of rain. It moved in overnight, a lot of spray on the roads. Not welcome news for parents who are finally taking the children back to school and actually getting pretty wet this morning, so take that wet weather gear with you. It starts dry in Scotland, rain moves in here. It does turn a little drier for Northern Ireland later. 5 to 11 degrees are temperatures, but adding in the cloud, the wind and the rain feeling pretty disappointing. And it's through this evening and overnight we see our next sort of weather front moving in from the west. The isobars squeeze together. We have warnings from the Met Office tonight into tomorrow morning. Gusts through western and southern areas, 60, maybe 70 miles an hour. So a squally night ahead, Ranveer. Wet and windy is the name of the game.
All right, lovely stuff. Thanks so much, Laura. Good morning, Britain here with you all the way through till 9 o'clock. Susanna will be joining me from 6:30. As the palace says, the royal family will privately address issues raised by Meghan and Harry. We'll be discussing the way forward for both next. Plus, Richard Arnold has the latest on Beyoncé, showing her support for the Duchess of Sussex. And we'll be talking about all the drama here too. First, let's get the news, travel and weather where you are.
Hello, I'm Faye Barker with the Good Morning Britain headlines in London. As we've been hearing, a Metropolitan Police officer has been arrested in connection with the disappearance of Sarah Everard. The 33-year-old went missing a week ago as she walked home from Clapham to Tulse Hill. The serving police officer was arrested at an address in Kent last night, as well as a woman who's being questioned on suspicion of assisting an offender. The arrests have been described as a serious and significant development. Well, last night, police were focusing the search around Poynder's Court housing complex. Miss Everard was last captured on a doorbell camera walking along Poynder's Road at around 9:30 p.m. last Wednesday. Officers are still appealing for anyone who may have information to get in touch. Westminster City Council is hosting a London-wide event to help provide information about COVID-19 vaccinations. The Vaccines Minister, Nadeem Zahawi, will join the event. And the Hampton Court Flower Show will go ahead in July, making it among the first major outdoor events to return after it's hoped all restrictions are lifted. To the travel in Enfield, Salisbury Road is closed following an accident near Percival Road. Elsewhere on the Piccadilly line, there's no service eastbound between Hyde Park Corner and Arnos Grove. Let's check on the weather. Here's Sally.
Dentec Temporary Tooth Repair Kit sponsors the local weather on Good Morning Britain.
Hello there and a very good morning to you. So all in all, a pretty grotty day out there. We have a wet and windy scene ahead of us. Outbreaks of rain on and off throughout the day. Some breaks at times, but some of those outbreaks a little bit heavier. And those winds increasing throughout the day into the afternoon and the evening as well. Maybe gusts of 40 miles per hour by mid-afternoon and a bit colder than yesterday. See you later on. Cheerio.
That's the latest in London. Now back to Ranveer.
Right, welcome back. Let's take a look at some of the front pages. Of course, Piers leaving the show is on the front of most of the papers this morning. Let's take a look at some of them. The Daily Mirror reports on Buckingham Palace's response to the Duke and Duchess of Sussex's Oprah interview. The paper focuses on the conciliatory tone of the Queen's statement with the heading, "We will always love you." According to the Daily Telegraph, the Queen is taking Meghan and Harry's claims of racism within the family very seriously, but in a statement she added that the recollections may vary. "We will address this in private," is the Guardian's headline from the Palace's statement. It pictures the Prince of Wales on a visit to a vaccination clinic yesterday. I'm joined now by the former royal editor of The Sun, Duncan Larkham. Good morning to you. It's interesting this morning to read, you know, in lots of the papers, there is a starting to slightly try and unpick the claims that were made in the interview about security, about Archie's status as a prince, and a sort of sense that perhaps because it was done in America by an American woman, that actually some of those points were not able to be probed properly.
Yes, that's right. I mean, obviously Oprah's interview was astonishing and a bombshell. But yes, that is very interesting today how the papers are sort of saying all those questions that perhaps she should have just pushed a little bit further. And they list. I mean, it's a fascinating read this morning. But yes, I mean, the problem really is that you know, people have talked in terms of this interview being akin to an Exocet missile being fired at the royal family from across the Atlantic. But in reality, it's a series of pop shots, a series of allegations, some of them incredibly serious and have to be taken seriously. But there's a lot of ambiguity, a lot of inconsistencies, and a lot of confusion, I think, this morning as people continue to try and absorb the impact and the implications of this astonishing set of events.
And when the palace says that obviously it takes the claims of racism very seriously and they'll be looking at it privately, there are questions over whether, as a publicly funded institution, whether privately is good enough.
Well, I mean, yes, the royal family might be accused of that. What this statement that has come out, I mean, it's got the Queen's fingerprints all over it. It is effectively a statement appealing, if you like, between the lines for calm, appealing for a little bit of space, but insisting that this is something, some of those comments, the family themselves are taking very seriously. The last thing the palace would have wanted, having had a fair amount of warning that these series of bombshells were coming, the last thing they would have wanted was to have been forced into a tit for tat, who said what, and who, you know, who said what when. They wouldn't want to respond. It's an indication of just how serious the implications of some of these accusations are that has forced the royal family at this stage and forced the Queen to try and take personal control of this, and they had to respond.
And it's interesting, isn't it, when we say that, you know, recollections vary, one wonders how they'll ever come to a conclusion, because it will be what was said behind closed doors between one person and another person. But I think that's all we've got time for with you this morning. But thank you so much for joining us on the programme. Oh, we have got a bit more time. Sorry, I slightly misheard the timings. In terms of that, actually, on that point that I was making, how does any investigation in the royal family conclude anything? Because there are these claims of bullying against Meghan Markle that have to be investigated. It is essentially Harry's word, isn't it, about what somebody said to him?
Well, it is, and what we saw from Meghan was her relaying a conversation, so it wouldn't stand up in court anyway as it stands, because it would be deemed third-party information. But yeah, what we do know from this statement, if you, again, reading between the lines, is clearly whoever this, and to use sort of the allegation from Meghan, whoever this sort of closet racist might be within the royal family, which again is, you know, let's calm down about that. I'm sure that's not the case, but the Queen has clearly spoken to whoever it is, whether it's Prince Charles, William, Kate, Camilla, we simply don't know yet, thanks to Harry. But the Queen has spoken, and she has already compared their version of events to those outlined in front of, unfortunately, 49 million viewers around the world.
Do you get any sense that the Queen will be able to heal this rift? Because obviously they were very praising to her as an individual, weren't they?
Yes, and I mean, the problem there, of course, is that an attack on the royal family is ultimately an attack on the Queen, and there's no escaping that. I think, well, Harry and Meghan are not coming back to Britain now, we definitely know that. And I think the Queen will hope that over time this will just calm down. But I think what we need to keep into context here is the Queen has almost been on the throne for 70 years. Winston Churchill was her first Prime Minister. And it seems astonishing as she prepares to celebrate her 95th birthday next month, that all of a sudden, thanks to a person who was the jewel in the crown of the royal family just 2 years ago, has now gone rogue against the royal family.
All right, thanks so much, Duncan. The Oprah and Meghan and Harry interview is available now on the ITV Hub. It's time for the entertainment news. Richard Arnold joins us from Dickie's Den. Morning, Dickie.
Morning, Rampy.
Beyonce, she's talking about Meghan.
She has indeed. Queen Bee has sent her love to Meghan Markle after that bombshell interview, of course, which has been the talk of the town, the talk of the nation, and the talk of the globe. The Music Monitor posted a throwback pic of herself on the website, accompanied by this message. Thank you, Meghan, for your courage and leadership. We are all strengthened and inspired by you. The pic of the pair, you may remember, was taken way back at the Lion King premiere a couple of years ago, in which they reportedly discussed Harry and Meghan's son, Archie, who was also a big topic of conversation in the Oprah interview, of course. Rap King Jay-Z, you may remember as well, offered the pair some advice, telling them to find some time for yourself. Wise words indeed. As you've already teased as well, Ranveer, from the real-life shenanigans at Buck House that we have been following very closely, of course, to the fictional upstairs and downstairs drama at Downton Abbey. You mentioned it at the top of the show. It looks like we are about to return to that famous big house. It's highly anticipated, of course. It took some 10 million to make, and it banked 140 million in the box office. So it's a bit of a no-brainer, really. Hugh Bonneville, who fans know, of course, as Lord Grantham, recently said they are desperate, the entire cast, if they can get them together, desperate to do it, COVID permitting, of course, as well as their schedules. He says, if everybody who's offered a vaccine takes a vaccine, we can make a movie. Sage words indeed.
Some exciting I'm a Celeb gossip too.
Canoodling under the jungle canopy once more. Could it happen this year again? COVID restrictions permitting. We could be returning to I'm a Celeb Down Under, despite the success, of course, at Get It Castle in Wales last year. ITV bosses are keen to get the stellar cast, as I say, canoodling once again down under. Otherwise, another series in Wales will be on the cards. But we want sunshine and a bit more of a sizzler this year. That's according to the fans, and ITV bosses are doing their best to deliver.
Oscars news? I'm told.
Oscars news, yes.
Yes.
Prepare to frock up, and instead of the clatter of heels, you're going to hear the clatter of a rattler, because it looks like it could be in a train station this year in Los Angeles, as well as the Dolby Theatre. You're looking at pictures of Union Station in LA. April's ceremony, of course, is going ahead on the 26th of April. The nominations are on March 15th, all of which is eagerly anticipated. But yet, the Frocky Horrors could be taking place at a train station in Los Angeles this year, because it's just big enough to keep those egos safely apart.
Right, Dickie, thanks so much. Coming up next, Susanna is here joining me in a moment. We'll be speaking to Transport Secretary Gant Shapps at 8:30, which I'm sure is what you're really waiting to hear. Plus, G&B favourite Hermione Rose reveals what it feels like to hold her mum's hand for the first time, thanks to her revolutionary bionic arm.
Wow, everyone! It's lightning! Proud sponsors of Good Morning Britain National Weather. Boxed boilers.
Good morning to you. A powerful jet stream has been ramping up, and it's set to drive wet and windy weather across our shores through the next few days. It's coming right across the Atlantic. It's the conveyor belt that brings with it wet and windy weather. Weather fronts moving through, showing the rain. The isobars close together, showing how windy it will be. There are warnings in force for wind for tomorrow, but they are likely to be more issued as we head through the rest of this coming week. So some very different weather to come after pretty much for the last month. It's been largely dry for many of us, but the outlook for this morning is this: a very wet scene greeting us this morning, a band of heavy rain moving through England and Wales, and another one hot on its heels making its way into Northern Ireland. So first thing this morning, dry for Scotland, a few scattered showers here, but it won't stay that way for long, because this wet and windy weather spreads right across the country. Temperatures today, arbitrary really, 11, 12 best for most, but it will turn wet and windy, so it will feel a lot colder than that. So let's check out this outlook, which is looking very different to what we've seen over the last couple of weeks. First of all, let's start with our temperatures across the north of the UK. Scotland, Northern Ireland, the far north of England. Average temperature lying down here, The outlook is relatively mild for many of us, but it's percentage charts of rainfall that is much higher than it's been over the last few days. And also looking at the weather symbols as well. Heavy rain through the country, for the northern areas today, tomorrow lasting for the rest of the working week, but hints that things turn drier through the weekend and on into next week. The fortunes further south for your 7 days, helping you plan. Again, for England and Wales, south of the Humber, south of around about Leeds, the outlook is mild. Average temperature line is down here, around about 9 for the time of year. But it's the rainfall. Percentages have been relatively low for the last couple of weeks, nearly the last month, actually. Heavy today, very high chance of rainfall, and for the rest of the working week. But again, the outlook turns drier for many of us as we head into next week, as the winds also look set to ease as well. For the weather where you are in detail, go to itv.com/weather.
Good morning, Britain. Her Majesty breaks her silence. The Queen finally responds to Harry and Meghan's bombshell interview, but questions the couple's version of events.
COVID third wave warning. Professor Chris Whitty says lifting restrictions too soon would lead to a surge in new infections. Could the Prime Minister's roadmap out of lockdown be delayed?
Fighting fake news, Facebook's new campaign to help users spot misinformation online. But should the social media giant be doing more to block misleading and abusive posts before they appear? We'll ask their Vice President after 7.
And his singing moved his campmates to tears, but could Russell Watson be about to head back to the I'm a Celebrity castle? He reveals all when he joins us just before 8.
Wednesday, 10th of March, 2021. Live from Television Centre in London. This is Good Morning Britain with Susanna Reid and Ranveer Singh.
Good morning, Britain. It has just gone 6:30. Welcome to the programme. A number of people, of course, will know the news, and many of you will not, and will be surprised that Piers Morgan is not here this morning. Now, Piers and I have disagreed on many things, and that dynamic was one of the things that viewers loved about the programme. He is, without doubt, an outspoken, challenging, opinionated, disruptive broadcaster. He has many critics and he has many fans. You will know that I disagreed with him about Meghan's interview. He himself clarified his comments about her mental health on the show yesterday. There are many voices on GMB and everyone has their say. But now Piers has decided to leave the programme. Some of you may cheer and others will boo. He has been my presenting partner, Monday to Wednesday, for more than 5 years. And during Brexit and the pandemic and other issues, he has been a voice for many of you and a voice that many of you have railed against. It is certainly going to be very different. But shows go on, and so on we go.
Well said. That can't have been easy. It's not easy, is it? He's a big character. And lots of people have got in touch to say, this was always on the cards. People are glad that he's gone. Many viewers will be absolutely gutted this morning because he is, we've had our highest ratings on Monday. There's a reason for that. People want to know what he thinks and people like to hear whether they agree with him or not. They want to hear what he has to say. And, we've all been on that ride, haven't we? We've all been on that ride. And, don't call him Marmite for nothing. There's a reason for that. And yeah, look, we are here. The show is still GMB. We still do our job and we've still got lots to say and lots to debate. But of course, for many of you this morning, you will be scratching your heads a little bit. But we understand that. And a colleague of ours has left. So that is it's a different atmosphere in the studio today. It's a slightly discombobulating feeling for all of us.
You were due to be on in any case.
I was here anyway.
It's Wednesday.
Yes, don't read anything into this. I was here anyway this morning.
And so you have just shifted seats?
Yes, I've shifted seats on this brand new desk. I'm glad to be here to be able to sort of, go through the programme with you today. It is it's a strange morning for all of us here. But the decision has been made, and I think, when there are thousands of complaints about something, things have to be taken seriously, And also, of course, you know, Buckingham Palace are taking what Meghan said very seriously. They've issued a statement, of course, saying that they're going to be investigating things privately.
Well, that Meghan and Harry interview has had reverberations in ways that many of us may not have expected. And of course, yesterday we had the statement on behalf of Her Majesty the Queen, saying the whole family is saddened to learn the full extent of how challenging the last few years have been for Harry and Meghan. The issues raised, particularly that of race, are concerning. While some recollections may vary, they are taken very seriously. They will be addressed by the family privately. Harry, Meghan and Archie will always be much-loved family members. Ranveer, what did you make of the interview? This is the first time we've had a chance to...
Yeah, I tell you what, I didn't have any... I didn't make any comments about it until I actually saw it on ITV, because I just thought, you know, when you watch clips and then the whole echo chamber of everybody saying things, which is odd, because obviously I work on this programme, which is what we do. But I just sort of say... And, you know, and it was interesting to me. I felt that, actually, I felt you'd have to have a kind of cold heart to not feel something about, you know, whether just the idea that somebody is feeling that way. I think you have to have a heart and you feel something for that person. Of course, there was lots of talk this morning about some of the claims that they made. Of course, even in the royal statement, it says recollections may vary, which is a fascinating sort of slight... It gives you an idea of where the palace are thinking. And we had the former editor of the royal editor of The Sun on this morning saying it sounds like the Queen has already spoken to whoever she thinks said this.
And they've said something different.
Yes, and they've said something different. Lots of questions this morning about why the security was taken away from them when they were in Canada.
They obviously spoke for a much longer time than was put together for the actual interview. And so there are new clips that are coming out, and it looks like, you know, bombshell after bombshell is going to come out. One of the clips that has been released since the interview was aired in America on Sunday and then here on ITV on Monday is a very personal issue about privacy.
Yes.
And there has been a huge row over, you know, if you're in the public eye, how much of your privacy then do you concede? And Meghan had her say about this.
I think everyone has a basic right to privacy. If you're at work and you have a photograph of your child on your desk and your coworker says, "Oh my gosh, your kid's so cute, that's fantastic. Can I see your phone so I can see all the pictures of your child?" You go, "No, this is the picture I'm comfortable sharing with you." And then if they double down and say, "No, but you already showed me that one, so you have to show me everything." You know what, I'm just gonna hire someone to sit in front of your house or hide in the bushes and take pictures into your backyard because you've lost your right to privacy because you shared one image with me. That's sort of the flawed argument and its operating mechanism that they're confusing people to think. I think life is about being able to share our stories and share parts of our lives that you're comfortable with. There's no one who's on Instagram or social media that would say, because I shared this one picture, that entitles you to have my entire camera roll. So it's about boundaries and it's about respect. They've created a false narrative. I mean, I've never talked about privacy. I think that's just a basic understanding.
Of course, the royal family depend on coverage in order for people to see what they do. They obviously, I mean, we're talking at the moment about how they need to be held accountable, and that comes with scrutiny, doesn't it? And you also have to, you know, cope with criticism in the press as well. But it's just that how much do you give and how much is then taken from you? And that's something that I mean, I'm down here on the scale when it comes to how much, you know, my life is scrutinised. But I don't want, you know, my whole life, just because I'm on television, I don't want my whole life opened up to scrutiny.
No, it's interesting though, isn't it? I think if you're publicly funded, I mean, the way we treat MPs and their private lives is completely different, isn't it? We you know, you publicly fund these people and therefore you feel that you have an element of not control, but you certainly feel like you have a certain right to know what is happening. What was fascinating, obviously, and we're talking to
just on that, I was going to say that I think when you're in public life, if what you're doing in private conflicts with what you're saying in public, I can see how you should be, held accountable for that and sort of accusations of hypocrisy. But if you're
Which they did get, didn't they, about the private jets and things like that?
Yeah, and the baby shower and spending money and all the rest of it. So criticism has to be borne if you're going to put your head above the parapet. But her point is about, do people have access to her all the time and photographs of her? Do they have the right to be there all the time in her life? And
well, the papers would say yes, wouldn't they? Because it sells papers, and so therefore. Katie, should we speak to Katie Nichols, who is an author, and she wrote Harry and Meghan. Morning to you. It is that, we had the Society of Editors who represents newspapers saying, look, there is no bigotry within the press that they can see. Of course, many journalists absolutely disagree with that. Editors, lots of people say, hang on a minute, it's just a representation of society. But the question of privacy, what do you make of that clip that we just heard of Meghan there? Does she have a point that actually, even when you are publicly funded, even if you're in the royal family, that there is a basic right to absolute privacy at some stage?
Well, listen, you have to remember that this is a mother. She's pregnant with her second child. She has had drones fly over the property trying to take pictures of Archie when they put pictures of Archie out in the public domain. And I think most people would say, well, this is a young baby. They have a right to privacy. The problem, and don't forget that Meghan has just won a massive privacy battle against the Mail on Sunday after the publication of that letter that she wrote to her father after the wedding. So she's had a lot of victory in the courts when it comes to privacy, and now also we know copyright. But I think the problem is that once you open up Pandora's box, which she and Harry have done in the most spectacular way with Oprah, it is very hard to then close it. And it is why, quite simply, in the 70 years, the Queen has never given an interview, because she knows that once you let the light in, people just want more and more. And it is a very complex issue. You sit there, you listen to her, and her analogy makes sense. Why should you show every picture in the album? But you've opened it up.
The trouble is, Katie, I mean, that they, their argument for doing that big interview was because they feel they had been maligned, that they had not been protected from lies about them, that there were stories that were coming out which were simply not true. That they were subject to constant negative press, but not given a fair ride in the press, and therefore they needed to put their side of the story on the record. But as you say, there's an irony with that, which is that they have just opened up a 2-hour spotlight on their lives, which you would either take the view, OK, now we should back off, or you take the view, well, there we go, you've just, opened yourselves up to more scrutiny.
Well, I think it's very interesting because, of course, I write for Vanity Fair, so I sort of see this from a US audience perspective as well as a British perspective. And certainly when you go through the tabloids here, it's almost open season all over again. And I think people here struggle to understand that when they left, and they said there were multiple reasons for leaving, all of which you've just listed, Susanna, but that they ultimately left because Harry wanted to escape the scrutiny of the spotlight. This is a man who, as a young boy, walked behind his mother's coffin. The media spotlight was trained on him from the day he could walk. And so there was an understanding, OK, well, you want to get out of the spotlight. We understand that because you don't want the same upbringing for your children. But then to go and chat with James Corden and reveal wonderful details about Archie, people just struggle to reconcile that. It's like you can't have it both ways.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because it was interesting because, when asked about, obviously this is about launching them in America. They've got these big deals with some streaming giants.
Netflix.
And
Spotify.
That one. And it was interesting because it was almost like he was trying to make the point, well, I wouldn't have to do this if my dad paid for my security. It was almost, you got that sense that he felt like, well, I've got to do something now, and we're being offered millions of pounds to do this. So that requires more exposure, doesn't it? In a way, they have had to do those deals, haven't they?
Well, Yes, they have had to make a career for themselves. In stepping down as senior royals, they were essentially losing public funding. And I think there was an expectation with losing that public funding, they would lose that public scrutiny. Well, you don't lose public scrutiny when you then go on and sign major deals with international streaming giants like Netflix. It's going to put you right bang centre in the spotlight. We were told they were going to use these programmes to put the spotlight on the causes that are close to them. But thus far, and I'm sure they will, by the way, I'm absolutely sure they will, but thus far, all we've seen of them in the public eye is talking about their private lives. And that is problematic. It'll be very interesting to see if they do take another privacy case against a tabloid or a paparazzi in the future, whether they will win it. As I said, they've had success up until now, but I do think the Oprah interview is a game changer in that privacy argument.
What do you make, Katie, of the statement from Buckingham Palace, where the Queen appears to question Meghan and Harry's version of events and says recollections may vary? I mean, there were some very serious allegations, particularly about the discussion around the colour of their unborn child's skin. And the palace has taken its time to respond. They have now responded. How will that be received?
Well, it's very clear from that very short, succinct, I think it's 61-word statement, that the intention of this is to dampen out the flames that this interview has caused. I mean, it was dynamite. There's no two ways about it. And it took them 36 hours to respond. I think that is an indication that despite being very short, a lot of thought, a lot of care went into that statement. It's sort of sandwiched, isn't it? The beginning of it is about sadness, which clearly, I mean, I am told that the family are devastated by this. And the statement ends with love, a message of love from the Queen, which you don't often hear from her. And this is a personal statement from the Queen. But it's that middle killer line, isn't it, that some recollections may vary. And I think people, as inflammatory as this has been, and it absolutely has been, I do think so much of it is about context. And I think the reason the Queen has taken her time is because she clearly wanted to speak to that member of the royal family to find out what their recollection of events was. And it appears that that was different to how it was interpreted by Harry and Meghan. So the other point is that she clearly wants to bring it back into the family. This has turned into a soap opera. The Duke of Edinburgh, who is still in hospital, will absolutely hate that. She wants to rein this in, try and deal with it as a family. And I also think that statement makes that very clear. We're not going to hear from the palace on this.
OK. Do you think this particular part of the bombshell revelations, do you think speculation will end until... You know, I mean, you say that the statement is supposed to calm things down, but until we know what was said, by whom, and in what context, that speculation is going to continue to rage, is it not?
Well, listen, speculation and the royal family are synonymous. You don't get one without the other. And the palace's strategy to never complain, never explain, or not comment works most of the time. I think only time will tell. They are defamatory allegations. Oh no, you haven't seen any names named yet. They are very, very serious allegations. So certainly there's a sense at the palace that we are taking this now out of the public arena. Of course, whether Harry and Meghan decide to sort of put that back in, we'll wait and see. Although Harry did say it's a conversation that he will never have. So I think the intention is that as far as the royal family is concerned, this name is not going to come out. It's going to be dealt with behind closed doors.
And it's interesting. Thanks very much for joining us. We've got Malcolm Turnbull with us, actually, the former Australian Prime Minister, because, of course, the question it has raised for many people, good morning to you, is whether the monarchy, how long it can last for, whether it's still relevant to people, whether... there was a YouGov poll that suggested that the vast majority of younger people thought they'd been treated unfairly. You look forward, it's the younger people who are going to be making all the votes and making all the policy decisions, whether actually in 20 years' time, whether those young people will be thinking, hang on a minute, the royal family mean nothing to me anymore. You obviously have some very strong opinions on this. You've met Harry and Meghan, and you led the Republican movement in Australia. Do you think that this is a game changer for Australia, actually, in terms of how they view the royal family?
Well, look, the answer is it's obviously not positive for the royal family, and nobody takes any pleasure in any family having this sort of disruption, this sort of unhappiness, this sort of division. So, I think there's a lot of sympathy out there for all of the royal family at the moment, even from Republicans like myself, perhaps especially from Republicans like myself. The bottom line is that in Australia, the scandals, the personalities, the dramas of the royal family are not really the issue. The issue is that Australia's head of state should be an Australian citizen chosen by Australians, not the King or Queen of the United Kingdom. So our case here has always been essentially a patriotic one, and it's quite possible to be, as many Australians are, a very great admirer of Queen Elizabeth, who isn't, and so to be an Elizabethan but not support the British monarchy being our head of state for all time.
The last Australian referendum on this, 1999, the no votes led 54%, just over 54%, just over 45%. When is there going to be another referendum on whether to abolish the monarchy?
Well, look, I believe there will be. I mean, back in '99, I said that that if we vote no, it'll mean no for a long time, and that the next time the issue will be after the end of the Queen's reign. I mean, what happened in '99 was that there was, at the same time as we were debating whether we should replace the British monarch with an Australian as our head of state, there was also a group of people who supported that proposition generally, but believed the president should be chosen by a direct popular election, as opposed to being chosen by a two-thirds majority of Parliament so that you had, bipartisan support. I think that's, what we have to do next time is make sure that the debate over the method of election, of choosing the head of state, is done first and separately, and then having decided that, we then put the fundamental question of republic or monarchy to the people again.
You were Prime Minister when you met the couple back in 2018. I think that was before they did their tour of Australia.
That's right.
They had a very successful tour of your country, but it did spark another significant moment in the interview with Oprah. The Duke of Sussex hinted that other royals became jealous of Meghan after they toured Australia. And there were echoes there, anyone seen The Crown, of Prince Charles and Princess Diana's visit back in 1983. Let's have a look.
I watched The Crown. Do you all watch The Crown?
I've watched some of it. We've watched some of it.
We've watched some of it.
But there is this, I think it was the fourth season, actually, where there's an Australian tour. So is that what you're talking about? It brought back memories of that? The Australian tour where your father and your mother went there and your mother was bedazzling. So are you saying that there were hints of jealousy?
Look, I just wish that we would all learn from the past.
What were your memories of that tour and how people felt about Harry and Meghan in Australia?
Well, look, I don't think it was quite as, adulatory or excited as the tour of Charles and Diana all those years ago, but they were very, very well received. I mean, they are a very charming, engaging young couple. They come across as a very modern young couple. I mean, I've been with Harry. Harry's spoken at events that I arranged, for veterans. I mean, he's been the patron of the Invictus movement. We had an event here at Kirribilli House, the Prime Minister's residence in Sydney. And, he's a very eloquent, charming young guy. And Meghan is a very charming young woman. They're a modern couple, and people were pleased to see them. I think it's tragic that they've fallen out with other people in the family. And, you've got to really ask yourself, I think, and it's particularly in the United Kingdom, whether there's something wrong with the system, and that's not just the royal household, but it's the media culture that seems to have such a devastating impact on one generation after another.
What do you think the problems are?
Well, look, I honestly, to say that I'm not a royal expert is the understatement of the century, right? So
no, but you're an expert at being in public life and having a public profile and experience of the media and the system, as you call it.
Yeah, look, I think I'd say the tabloid media in Britain, in particular, monetises the royal family, right? They're the bread and butter, as we all know. But at the same time, they seem to want to do everything they can to destroy them. You know, I would have thought it would be a very tough task being one of those royals, because you've got all of yes, sure, you've got status and, you know, a nice place to live and that sort of thing, which is important, I guess. But at the same time, you know, they've got enormous scrutiny, no privacy, but in reality, no power. You see, if you are the Prime Minister or a cabinet minister, sure, there's a fair bit of public scrutiny and sometimes the media may disappoint you in their treatment of you, but you are exercising real power and you are making real decisions. So that's the price you pay. But it's, you know, it's a gilded cage, and I guess that's why Harry talked about escaping.
Okay,
and,
you don't think there's any irony in you saying that it's the tabloid press that wants to destroy the royal family when you're a Republican and you want to abolish them as head of state?
No, not at all. I mean, look, you can make your own judgment about the way the media covers the royal family in Britain. You don't need me to help you with that. I'm making an observation from a long way away. Look, our argument is not against the Queen. It's not against her family. It doesn't depend on the virtue or vices, the good or bad behaviour of any member of the royal family. It is simply a patriotic proposition that Australia's head of state should be an Australian citizen, that we should think so well of our nation and its people that our head of state should be an Australian. It's a simple patriotic proposition.
And before we let you go, do you think you are closer to that goal as a result of this crisis?
Look, it's too early to say. It certainly does not advance the cause of the monarchy, but, you know, the monarchy has weathered many scandals and many dramas, so I've got no doubt it will weather those in the future. As I said, the interesting thing about the Republican movement in Britain and Australia is that they're very different. You know, in the UK, you've got a fundamental proposition about whether you should have a hereditary institution at the top of your constitution. Yeah. That's a reasonable argument. In Australia, we say it's not a question of monarchy, good or bad. Okay. It's just that we want to have an Australian.
We understand. Malcolm Turnbull, former Australian Prime Minister.
So
thank you very much indeed.
And Katie as well. Thank you. All right, lots more still to come. You're watching Good Morning Britain on ITV.
See you in a moment.
Morning. Now, with spring just around the corner, I've got a prize that will set you up for the months to come. And it all starts with £40,000 in cash.
Just imagine ITV transferring 40 grand into your bank account this year.
What with holidays being in short supply of late, this is the prize that could change all that. Fancy heading off in your very own VW camper van? In fact, it's this one. Oh no, don't worry, you're not included.
It comes with everything you need to make it your home from home. 2 double beds, a sink, hob and fridge freezer, plus tables and chairs for dining in or out.
This prize is worth over £100,000. That's £40,000 in tax-free cash and this brand new VW camper van. You win the lot. Come on, Ted, let's go.
For your chance to win a camper van and £40,000, go to the website. Entries cost £2. Text WIN to 62525. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or call 09068 782525. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and phone number to BK10, PO Box 7558, Derby, DE1 0NQ. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 2 p.m. on Friday the 26th of March. Good luck.
We predict showers. Warm showers. Do you see? Proud sponsors of Good Morning Britain National Weather. Boxed boilers.
Good morning to you. Umbrellas at the ready. Dig them out. It's been a while, but there is rain on the way. A powerful jet stream is driving across the Atlantic. It's a conveyor belt up in the upper atmosphere that brings weather systems to our shores. It will do two things: bring rain. The isobars, the pressure lines tight together, showing it will be windy. And there are warnings in force tonight into tomorrow for gusts of 60 to 70 miles an hour. So feeling autumnal outside as we head through the next few days. Wet and windy is the name of the game. You can barely make out the UK beneath the blanket of blue here. So a wet start this morning, a lot of spray on the roads if you are heading out first thing, particularly if you are taking the kids to school. Grab those wellies because you will need them. Through the day, it starts off dry in Scotland, but rain moves in here. The rain clears from Northern Ireland, but throughout, not just wet, also windy. Gusts of 60, 70 miles an hour developing through the southern and western coasts overnight tonight. That band of rain clears through, then the outlook, blustery showers tomorrow.
For the weather where you are in detail, go to itv.com/weather.
Wednesday, 10th of March, 2021. Live from Television Centre in London. This is Good Morning Britain with Susanna Reid and Ranveer Singh.
Good morning, Britain. It is 4 minutes past 7. Our main news this morning. The Queen says claims of racism within the royal family will be taken very seriously, but handled in private.
The statement from the palace follows allegations made by the Duke and Duchess of Sussex during their interview with Oprah Winfrey. Our chief correspondent, Richard Gaisford, is at Buckingham Palace. Morning, Richard. So how's the Queen's response to the interview been received? It's a very short statement, but it said quite a lot, I thought.
Yeah, the two people it's squarely aimed at, the Sussexes out in Los Angeles, haven't said anything about it yet. Some praise for the conciliatory tone, for the love that is shown for the couple from the Queen. Some criticism too, though, Ranveer, that actually the investigation that it talks about is going to be held in private, so we might not get the outcome of what has been happening inside the royal household. The statement itself, some 60 words or so long, but it's 3 words in there that are key. Recollections may vary. The Queen acknowledging that even within the royal family, people have different opinions on what was said by whom and when. And that was the same in the interview, if you think back to it. Meghan talking about conversations Harry had relayed to her during pregnancy of concerns and comments about Archie's skin colour. But when he was asked about it, he talked about the fact that a comment was made that shocked him at the start of their relationship, before they were married.
More on a story that had a lot of people talking.
Her Majesty breaks her silence.
The Queen responds.
49 million people worldwide, we now know, tuned into that bombshell interview, and it's still making international waves. But Buckingham Palace took its time to respond, finally releasing a statement yesterday saying the whole family was saddened. The issues raised, it went on, particularly that of race, are concerning. While some recollections may vary, they're taken very seriously and will be addressed by the family privately.
The statement is very conciliatory, which doesn't surprise me at all because conciliation has always been one of the great themes of the Queen's reign.
They have also put in a line, some recollections may vary, and I think that is there deliberately, perhaps, just to sow, I think, a bit of a seed of doubt about some of the things that they said.
The interview's repercussions could be long-lasting. A former Australian Prime Minister said it strengthens the case for his country to become a republic.
In Australia, the scandals, the personalities, the dramas of the royal family are not really the issue. The issue is that Australia's head of state should be an Australian citizen, chosen by Australians, not the King or Queen of the United Kingdom.
Prince Charles got on with the work of the family firm with this visit to a London vaccine centre yesterday.
Sir, can I ask, what did you think of the interview?
Making it clear that further responses to this crisis will stay resolutely private. Richard Gaisford. Good morning, Britain.
A serving Metropolitan Police officer has been arrested overnight in connection with the disappearance of 33-year-old woman in South London.
Sarah Everard has not been seen since last Wednesday after visiting a friend in Clapham. Tom Barton is at the scene. Tom, this is an incredibly distressing story, and the news today as well will cause a lot of shock to people. What do we know?
It will indeed, Susanna. Yes, it was yesterday evening that police arrested that man at an address in Kent in connection with the disappearance of Sarah Everard. They also arrested a woman on suspicion of assisting an offender. 33-year-old Sarah disappeared last Wednesday after leaving a friend's house around 9 p.m. Police say they are doing everything they can to find her, but among the most alarming of those new details is that this arrested man was in the Met Police. In a statement, Police Assistant Commissioner Nick Fgrave said, "The arrest this evening is a serious and significant development. We will continue to work with all speed on this investigation, but the fact that the arrested man is a serving Metropolitan officer is both shocking and deeply disturbing." Sarah, last shown on CCTV on that night, was last of all seen near where we are here, and that was through a doorbell security camera that filmed her. And as we speak, where she is and what happened is still a mystery.
Tom, thank you. Britain could be hit by another wave of coronavirus if lockdown measures are lifted too quickly, according to England's chief medical officer.
The warning from Professor Chris Whitty comes amid concerns this morning that ethnic minority groups are at higher risk of illness and death with the virus because of the UK's what he called colour-blind vaccination programme. Nick Dixon is at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Birmingham. Nick, a number of doctors are saying that ethnic minority groups should now be prioritised for vaccines. Will that happen?
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is all coming this morning from healthcare professionals round here at the Royal College of Medicine, and they make some really very interesting and very serious points here. What they're saying, effectively, is that the vaccine rollout, as it stands, is just disregarding completely the severity, the impact, and the full seriousness, really, of the pandemic within ethnic minority groups. And what they're suggesting is that there should be much more flexibility at a local level in terms of moving people onto the priority list and getting them the vaccination itself, and not just focusing completely on the age group category. We know at the moment many people within the BAME community have very serious concerns and reservations about actually having the vaccine in the first place for a number of different reasons. They perhaps feel that they can't trust it, they don't feel that it's safe, or there aren't really enough sort of trusted voices within their community actually vouching for the vaccine itself.
The vaccine programme is going well, but I think early on in the programme we should have targeted high risk groups such as ethnic minorities. I think if they'd been seen as a priority, they would have taken the vaccine up at a higher rate, which would have helped them and helped the wider population as well.
As you mentioned earlier, Ranveer, the Chief Medical Officer, Chris Whitty, has been warning about the dangers of easing the restrictions and the lockdown too early. He has said that it really is inevitable at this stage that there will be another surge of the virus later in the year, around autumn, winter time, and it will impact on vulnerable groups, people who haven't had the vaccine or where the vaccine simply hasn't been particularly effective by that stage.
Thanks very
Dixon,
much.
thank you.
Gareth Southgate's campaigning to encourage more children out onto football pitches and get active again when restrictions on organised sport are lifted at the end of this month.
Jonathan Swain has been speaking with the England manager at St George's Park.
He's still got his skills and he's kicking off a busy few months. The delayed Euros, it seems, will happen from June, but the England boss admits that the pandemic is making preparations with the team a little difficult.
There's been a lot of restrictions on the players in terms of how we have to live day to day when we're together with England, because we're getting people from different clubs.
In a couple of months, the England team will be here preparing for this year's Euros. But for almost a year now, many football pitches around the country have been empty. And that's why the England manager is encouraging children to put their boots on. He's filming coaching videos and encouraging parents to sign up to fun football sessions organised by McDonald's and the English FA.
There's the social part of being with your friends and interacting. There's the health benefits for physical and mental health.
This summer, England have a much anticipated match against Scotland, and he just hopes that fans will be allowed in. Normally, before major tournaments, there's the usual hype of an expectant nation. But this summer, after everything we've all been through, perhaps just enjoyment that it's happening at all. Jonathan Swain, Good Morning Britain.
The media regulator Ofcom's launched an investigation relating to comments made by Piers on this programme about the interview with Meghan and Harry. The watchdog received more than 41,000 complaints about his remarks on Monday. And, of course, as you know, he's left the show. So we've got lots to talk about, haven't we? It's everywhere. You know it's happened. I know it's what everyone's talking about at home this morning. You watch the programme because, you know, you've loved the sort of vigour of it and the controversy of it, and whether you liked him or hated him, people still watched. And that sort of is the point. We've got Piers and Maguire coming on for a bit to talk about the newspaper review.
Andrew Piers.
Andrew Piers, yeah, just to be clear, yeah.
And Kevin Maguire.
And look, you know, from our point of view, Piers is a unique individual. I've never met anyone like him. Nope. Someone who had no fear about how people saw him or, you know, the impact possibly about what he said had on other people. But, you know, lots of people this morning are gutted he's gone. And lots of people will be thinking, well, you know, it was a long time coming and it was long overdue. And that's the point of it, is that he ruffled feathers and he shook up everything on breakfast television, on all channels. You know, it wasn't just about this show. He shook up the landscape of what we do, in the nature of what we do. So that can't be denied.
It has been a rollercoaster ride.
And you've been on it the whole time.
Yeah, we've had our ups and we've had our downs. And
you've suffered a lot of criticism and you've suffered a lot of sympathy over the years because you've sat there, you know.
We have had, as you know, as viewers, we have had our disagreements daily. I mean, there have been times when I've thought we haven't been able to agree on anything, on and off screen, of course. You know that. It's one of the dynamics of the programme. But Piers has made the decision to leave Good Morning Britain, and so it is looking very different this morning. But still ahead on the programme, of course, we're going to discuss that with Andrew Piers and Kevin Maguire. We're also going to discuss what's happening with lockdown restrictions and with this possibility, according to Chris Whitty, of a third wave.
And whether you should book your summer holidays. Greece have said from the end of May, we're welcoming Brits, you know, and lots of people will be clicking now, going, hang on a minute, maybe
So
Greece.
We've got the Transport Secretary, Grant Shapps, and we're going to talk to him a little bit about that. First, though, let's get the news, travel and weather, wherever you are this morning. See you in a moment.
Hello, I'm Faye Barker with the Good Morning Britain headlines in London. Well, as we've been hearing, a Metropolitan Police officer has been arrested in connection with the disappearance of Sarah Everard. The 33-year-old went missing a week ago as she walked home from Clapham to Tulse Hill. The serving police officer was arrested at an address in Kent last night, as well as a woman who's being questioned on suspicion of assisting an offender. The arrests have been described as a serious and significant development. Well, police are now focusing the search around Poynder's Court housing complex. Miss Everard was last captured on a doorbell camera walking along Poynder's Road at around 9:30 p.m. last Wednesday. Officers are still appealing for anyone who may have information to get in touch. In other news, Westminster City Council's hosting an online event tonight to help provide information about COVID-19 vaccinations. Research has shown only just over half of Asian Londoners and a third of Black Londoners say they will have the vaccine. And the Hampton Court Flower Show will go ahead in July, making it among the first major outdoor events to return after it's hoped all restrictions are lifted. To the travel in Enfield, Southbury Road is closed following an accident near Percival Road. On the tube, all lines are running with a good service. Let's check the weather. Here's Sally.
Dentec Temporary Tooth Repair Kit sponsors the local weather on Good Morning Britain.
Hello there and a very good morning to you. So all in all, a pretty grotty day out there. We have a wet and windy scene ahead of us. Outbreaks of rain on and off throughout the day. Some breaks at times, but some of those outbreaks a little bit heavier. And those winds increasing throughout the day into the afternoon and the evening as well. Maybe gusts of 40 miles per hour by mid-afternoon and a bit colder than yesterday. See you later on. Cheerio.
You're watching Good Morning Britain. I'll be back with your local update for London after 8.
Still ahead, of course, we have the paper review. Plus, as Facebook launches a campaign to stop misinformation on its platform, we are joined by the Vice President for Northern Europe. Next, you're watching Good Morning Britain on ITV. Piers' departure from this programme is on many of the front pages this morning. Let's take a look at them. The Daily Mirror reports on Buckingham Palace's response to the Duke and Duchess of Sussex's Oprah interview. The paper focuses on the conciliatory tone of the Queen's statement with the headline, "We will always love you."
According to the Daily Telegraph, the Queen is taking Meghan and Harry's claims of racism within the family very seriously. But in the statement, she added that recollections may vary.
We will address this in private, is The Guardian's headline from the Palace's statement. It pictures the Prince of Wales on a visit to a vaccination clinic yesterday. So, joining us now, Andrew Pearce and...
Facebook.
Oh,
should we do...
I'm sorry. We're going to speak to Andrew Pearce and Kevin Maguire in just a moment. First, though, in a challenging year marked by the pandemic, violent protests and an assault on the US Capitol, Facebook continues to draw criticism for its part in the spread of misinformation.
The social media giant has long promised to play a bigger role in stopping the tide of conspiracy theories. It's now launched a campaign to help its users spot misleading posts. We're joined now by the Vice President for Northern Europe at Facebook, Steve Hatch. Morning to you. It's interesting this, isn't it? Because obviously Facebook faces a lot of criticism because you make billions of pounds and then you, at this stage, haven't found a way of protecting the public and, as many say, democracy itself from misinformation. And this new campaign appears to be putting a great deal of burden on your users. Is that fair?
Well, it would be fair if it was the only thing we're doing, but it's not. And in fact, we've been investing very heavily in systems, investing billions of pounds, and we now have over 35,000 people working on safety and integrity. And for years, working out how to best tackle misinformation. And for the last year, we've been particularly laser focused on how we can focus on COVID-related misinformation. And that means that we detected and taken down 15 million pieces of harmful content. We fact-checked and labeled over 165 million pieces of misinformation. And really importantly, countering misinformation with the right information. So we've directed over 10 million visits to the NHS's website. And today's campaign is another tranche in that. It's another arsenal in this battle. So together with Full Fact, to create 3 simple steps for people to think about when they're consuming any content online, whether that's Facebook or anywhere else. And that's really just to perhaps pause sometimes and just think, well, okay, there are 3 things I can do around this. I can check the source, I can check how this information makes me feel, and I can check the context of this information.
Okay, can I just step in? Because I know that Facebook thinks of itself as a platform rather than a publisher. But effectively, you are a publisher. You're publishing all of this content for people to consume. And in the case of publishers, the publisher does all of that. It checks all of that, and it is regulated for that. To rely on the user to do that, I mean, I'll give you an example. If you receive abuse on a social media platform, you don't need to spend a couple of minutes thinking, how does this make me feel? You feel utterly awful. Now, why isn't Facebook doing more to stamp out abuse on its social media platforms?
Well, that's exactly what we're doing. And in terms of looking for regulation, you know, we welcome new rules and controls, and that's going through government at the moment, but we haven't waited for those things. We've made these big investments. In fact, our investments in safety and integrity are bigger now than the total revenue of the company when it first IPO'd. So we really hear this really clearly. And of course, when anyone receives any kind of form of abuse, whether it's in the real world or online, it's really damaging, it's really harmful. So that's why we have teams of experts.
Last October, The Guardian reported on a landmark survey which revealed shocking accounts of escalating online violence against girls and women across more than 20 countries. Explicit messages, pornographic photographs, cyber stalking and other forms of abuse. And the attacks were most common on Facebook, followed by Instagram and WhatsApp, your platforms. That's just a couple of months ago, and those attacks are escalating. You are simply not doing enough.
Well, I believe we're doing everything we can and we'll continue to think in innovative ways of doing it. Of course, we have the largest platform, so that comes with a really big responsibility.
A huge responsibility to these people who are experiencing abuse. A number of Premier League footballers, this is just last month, including Manchester United's Marcus Rashford, have received abusive online messages. Now, the Football Association has called for action from the government and says, the government says social media companies could face large fines, potentially amounting to billions, if you don't tackle abuse. Now, you say you're doing everything you can. Why are black footballers in particular still receiving this level of hate?
Anybody receiving hate is an awful experience. And I want to be really clear, it's not something we want on our platforms. It's not the people that use our platforms want as well. So we're working directly with the Premier League and the other football organisations to see what more can we do.
Okay, I'll tell you something that can be done. Why, when you go into the direct messages, for instance, on Instagram, why is it a sewer? Why are people allowed to send hateful, racist, abusive messages which affect people's state of mind? Why are they allowed to do that? If you are doing everything you can, then it suggests you can't do anything more. But you could certainly go into the direct messages.
Yeah, I think there's always more that we can do.
So you're not doing everything you can then?
So, for example, we're now anyone to control who actually can send them direct messages. Now, if you're a public figure, we know that comes with particular challenges because you might actually want to hear directly from the people that you're communicating with on Facebook or
Nobody
Instagram
wants racist abuse directly in their direct messages.
So that's why the next step.
No one wants sexual abuse directly in their direct messages. Why are you leaving it to the user to put in the filters? Why aren't you taking action as any responsible publisher would?
We are taking deep levels of action, lots of investment. And actually, if you look at the areas where we've been working to progress our takedowns of proactive takedowns of harmful content, many cases that is 95%. So, for example, on hate speech, for example, we're now at 95% proactively taking down that content. We certainly don't want it. We don't want people to have a bad experience. We work with experts that work here at Facebook and experts in other areas that help us construct the right policies and then make sure we're producing the system changes that need to take place.
And today, even more people will receive those messages in the direct message. I mean, I just don't understand why you're not acting as a responsible publisher in either deleting those messages before they're even sent or in getting rid of those accounts.
Well, certainly if people are continuing to violate accounts and to abuse people, we take them down. In fact, millions of accounts are taken down for people that aren't using the right rules. And it's quite often seen the case that anything goes, and it really doesn't. We have very strict community standards, and we work really hard to enforce them. And now,
the thing that people really struggle to understand, Steve, is that most people, use it as a sort of layman. We don't understand the technology behind it, and nor should we really need to know about it. It's for you to do it. But the thing is, and people have said this for years, you put one thing in, you put one search in, and you get dozens of adverts for the rest of time about this one. You look up for a pet thing, and it comes up forever. But, so that you have got the tools in there to recognise words that are used. And then, therefore, you can follow those words and then produce more adverts. The problem is that people say, well, hang on, there are obvious racist words, there are obvious abuse words. Why can't you use the same tools? And I know this sounds like a layman's question, but I think that's how people think. If you can do it to make money from adverts, why can't you use exactly the same or something similar to wheedle out words that you don't want on there? It just doesn't make sense to people in the public. It just, you know, you're just there to make profit. And as many say, actually, in the end, you allow so much misinformation to go out there. It actually damages democracy. It damages the way people vote, the way people think, the way people view the world.
Well, we want to make sure that our tools are being used for good. And we've seen that happen kind of again and again across the last few months when it comes to the pandemic. You know, we've heard quite what a crucial point we are in the pandemic right now, how getting the right information in a very real sense can make a real difference to us being able to, you know, get back to some form of normality. But at the same time, we want to make sure that we're taking down the bad content, you know, and we have made real progress.
Except in Australia, you took down all news feeds, and then actually ill-informed sort of fake news sites were still able to get through. So that sort of blunt tool didn't work, did it, in Australia?
Well, when it came to Australia, the reason for that, and for people that haven't been following it, I'm sure it did feel quite abrupt, but actually it's a form of legislation that simply couldn't work. We couldn't adhere to that legislation. So at that point, we didn't have any choice other than to
pay for journalism on your site.
We were able to then get the negotiating table, and it's great that Facebook is now back up for Australian users. Now in the UK, we've got a very different approach to news, where we have a separate section called Facebook News in the tab that enables publishers to be paid for that content, and also the Facebook Community News Project, which is now in its third year, enabling particularly local journalism to be sustained, because we know I think we all know quite how important, of course, having quality journalism. It's been a deeply challenged business model for many reasons, not least of all because we're reading less papers than we have. So of course it forms an important part, and we want to play a part in helping to sustain the future of journalism in the same way.
Well, I think
we want to help play a part to stay in a healthy, connected society where communities can thrive. We know that means
the Culture Secretary Oliver Dowden has told you your decision to pull the plug on those news feeds in Australia was a nuclear option that must not be repeated in the UK. I think a lot of people will think, well, if it affects you and you can pull the news feeds in reaction to what the Australian government was doing in terms of its legislation, you certainly have the power to be able to pull all the abuse before it gets directly to its targets. Steve Hatch, Facebook Vice President for Northern Europe.
We're going to continue to work really hard on that, and thanks for the time today, and I hope people can benefit from the campaign that's launching today.
Thank you very much indeed.
Lots of reaction, actually, people saying, how can they take down excerpts of music due to copywriting but can't deal with abusive posts? Somebody else saying, I've lost count of the number of times I've reported harmful or hateful content to Facebook. And
I've been told
I get a message that no action is going to be taken. Facebook does nothing. Somebody else saying, I've reported videos of people being beheaded. Sorry, that's a horrible word. And some pornographic images that are all apparently found they're not doing everything they can. Lots of people saying that they have reported content that then apparently doesn't go against their community rules. So there's plenty more to be done.
Still to come on the programme, that Buckingham Palace statement. Will it be enough to de-escalate the tension from Harry and Meghan's bombshell interview with Oprah? Discussing that after 8 and discussing the papers in just a moment. You're watching Good Morning Britain on ITV.
Right, 7:38. We're joined by the Mirror's Kevin Maguire, along with the Mail's Andrew Pearson, of course, Chair of Global. I'll say, of course, because Professor David Siridar is on as much as anybody else these days, so I say, of course, before your name. Good morning to you.
It's good to see you.
It's good to see you all.
There is an issue that is dominating the press, and it comes off the back of the Harry and Meghan bombshell interview that ITV broadcast on Monday night.
Where are you going with this, Suzanne? I've no idea.
The headline on the inside page is, Andrew, at your paper, Piers walks.
Yeah, he's always been quite capable of making as much news as the presenter or the journalist as the people he's talking about. Look, I'm very sorry he's gone. I've known Piers for a very long time. Kevin and I owe him a lot because he was pretty instrumental in getting us to become part of the GMB furniture, and we've loved being on with him. But I would say this, Piers isn't always right. I've often disagreed with him, and mental health is a very, very sensitive area. And one of the reasons we talk about it much more is because people like Prince Harry have been very public and very brave and talked about how they've needed counselling, they've needed therapy over the years, not least because of the death of his mother. When Meghan Markle talked about her own struggles in that Oprah Winfrey interview, I think perhaps Piers could have been a little more sensitive in his response to what she had to say. I have to say, though, I would say this. Bearing in mind what her husband has been through, I'm surprised she wasn't able to talk to him a lot more about the demon she was struggling with, and for him to find a way to help her, bearing in mind he's associated with a number of mental health charities.
Yeah. No, Piers clarified his comments here on the programme yesterday morning, saying it's not for me to question whether she felt those feelings. I wasn't in her mind, he said, and that's for her to say. Kevin, your paper, of course, also reporting on this, and he has an association with your paper. And as Andrew says, you know, you have a long-standing relationship with him as well. You know, he left the Mirror in dramatic circumstances, and now he's left Good Morning Britain in dramatic circumstances too.
No, he has. Look, we'll never forget you, Peter Morgan. No, I'm very sorry he's gone too. I worked for him at the Mirror. In fact, I fell out with him at the Mirror and left, went for a break from journalism at the Guardian for 6 years before going back. But I'm very sorry he's gone, because I think he's helped brilliantly to hold the government to account during the coronavirus crisis. Not giving them any wriggle room and punching up, and I think that was absolutely superb. I hope he rises again, comes back somewhere else. I'm sure he will, but I think he got it wrong on Meghan Markle initially on mental health, and I also think he was too polarising on the race question. I think he didn't get the subtleties of that at times. But no, I am sorry. He'll know the show must go on at GMB. He will know that. But as I say, I am sorry he's left.
And the show does go on, and we need to turn our attention to the pandemic, the lockdown, to COVID. Professor Devi Sridhar, children went back to school this week, and there are concerns that the fact that they are back in school in huge numbers, of course, will lead to a rise in infections. Does the massively successful vaccination campaign mitigate against that?
Well, sort of. We're in this really tricky situation where we want to open up, get the economy open. Kids had to get back into school in some way or the other. But at the same time, we don't want to tip R over 1 and then see an accelerating epidemic and then have to have restrictions put in place. The vaccine has helped because we are seeing hospitalizations come down in over 64s who have been vaccinated, but it's actually increasing in under 64s in terms of the percentage. So we can see the burden shifting now to people age 40 to 64. So we still have a ways to go till we get vaccinations through the younger age groups. It's coming, so people should be optimistic. There's light ahead. We're going to have a pretty good summer compared to what we've been through over the past 6 months, but we need to have patience.
Well, it's interesting. Can we just bring in Dr. Hillary here on these tests? So part of what's happening in schools is that there are these, I think we know, lateral flow tests, which are these sort of rapid tests. Sure. There is some confusion over, actually, if one's done at school and it comes out as positive, then you go for another one, which is the sort
PCR
of
test.
the PCR test, which is the much more sort of
Gold standard.
accurate. Yeah. And if that comes out as negative, actually, you still have to isolate the class and all of that. What is the point of that?
No, at school, I think, if you have a PCR test after a positive COVID lateral flow test, if it's done at school, that the whole class doesn't have to isolate.
There is a huge discrepancy going on. Different schools are adopting different policies, but it's quite clear the schools currently are having twice weekly rapid lateral flow tests, but these do give false positive results.
Yes.
So if one child has a positive lateral flow test, they should go home, self-isolate until they have the gold standard PCR test. If that PCR test is negative, they should be allowed to go back to school. So it's quite clear.
God, I'm confused. I am confused, and I'm the parent of children at school.
You don't take 30 children out of school because of one positive lateral flow test.
Let me give you an example. Rachel Clark, who is a doctor who we have featured numerous times on this programme, very outspoken about the government's handling of the pandemic. You really, really couldn't make this up, she tweets. After one day of school, my son and 30 other pupils are self-isolating at home for 10 days after one child had a positive school lateral flow test, even though the subsequent gold standard PCR test was negative, as you were saying.
Yes.
Doesn't make any sense. So they need to contact the community health people and check the school policy with what the government chief scientific officers are saying should be followed. It's straightforward. The lateral flow testing system is designed to reassure people and get as many children safely in school as possible. It's also being applied to staff members as well. So if we do plenty of these tests, which are less reliable than PCR but much more rapid, then at least we can say, right, it might be positive, go home, have the PCR test, but if that's negative, it rules out infection.
Professor David Sridhar, about this suggestion also that the vaccination programme ought to be prioritising those from ethnic minority backgrounds. I mean, that's been a narrative that we've come to understand over the last 6 months or so, that people from non-white backgrounds, for many myriad of reasons, are more affected by COVID deaths and how serious it gets for them. Does the vaccination programme need to change its priority from age now to ethnic minorities?
Well, this is a tricky one because it's not just ethnic minorities, it's also occupational risk. I really feel for police officers who are exposed to large crowds spitting at them, to teachers who might be going into classrooms where they feel unsafe. And so I think when I look at JCVI and their advice, they're saying we need to go at speed. The way we can go at speed administratively and get the most number of people covered as quickly as possible through our systems is through age and health issues, which are coded in the NHS systems. That's why we're going that approach. There are, of course, other considerations. Of course, ethnicity is a risk factor. Occupation is a risk factor. But it would slow down the rollout. And I think right now everyone acknowledges we need speed. And the UK is leading in terms of being as fast as it is in getting vaccines out.
Let's turn our attention back to the royal crisis. The Daily Mail, Andrew Pierce, this morning, you are running this poll. And the headline is now stripped them of their titles. 51% of people questioned said they should lose their titles. 28% should keep them. This is Harry and Meghan. The Queen has put out a statement saying, and you have used the word in your header, pointedly says, recollections may vary on the race row. There is clearly, as we're all experiencing, fallout from this bombshell interview. But there are key questions still for the royal family to answer, and the Queen has said those will be dealt with privately. We spoke a little earlier to the former Prime Minister of Australia, who talked about the fact this may impact popularity of the royal family and their standing over there for Republicans, for instance, and the Republican cause. What is going to be the ultimate result of what Harry and Meghan have said?
Well, the poll also shows that the public think the monarchy has been damaged by this row, and while most people spoken to think it was a mistake for the Sussexes to speak out in this way, that the damage is done. And I'm very sad to see that the popularity of the monarchy damaged in this way. And in fact, they've rather damaged themselves as well, because if you read into the detail of the poll, the Duchess of Sussex, Meghan Markle, is now the second least popular member of the royal family. Only Prince Andrew, who's caught up in all that ghastly paedophilia controversy over his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein, is much more unpopular. But look, the Queen took her time to put out that statement. Only 61 words, very measured, very careful. She's not going to get into a slanging match with Meghan and Harry. She makes the point they remain an important part of the family, as does baby Archie, as does the little girl that we now know is on her way. And the fact that she says they're going to deal with it privately, she needs to find out from Harry who was the royal who made those remarks about their son, the child that they were to have skin. And hopefully Harry knows who it was. They'll talk about it privately. But what the Queen is hoping now is that the great institution, the great ocean-going liner that's been with us for 1,000 years, can weather the storm, and I think it can, and move on. But there will be lessons. That awful cliche, lessons have to be learnt. And Meghan Markle isn't the first, she's not, let's be honest, she's not the first young woman to marry into the royal family and find it a rather difficult process.
Well,
Yeah,
absolutely.
but she represents the Commonwealth in a way that nobody else has, and I think that that's the damage, isn't it, around the world, is that a mixed heritage woman feels that she's been treated badly, and that is ultimately where the monarchy exists. It exists in the Commonwealth. That's sort of its power, if it has any.
And the monarchy is all about soft power. And if people around the world now think, hey, are there racists in the royal family? That is very bad for the United Kingdom PLC. And I think, actually, the Prime Minister ducked saying very much the other day, it's Prime Minister's question time today. I think he has to deal with it and address it, because it damages the institution of the United Kingdom if the monarchy is accused of racism in this way.
Kevin, is it realistic that this is going to be dealt with, as Buckingham Palace say in the statement, privately?
No, and nor should it be. They're attempting to brush very serious allegations under the red carpet and keep it that way. Now, of course, no family likes to see its dirty washing aired in public, but this is a publicly funded institution, taxpayer, give huge amounts of money. It's feather bedded. It's got to deal with this publicly. You cannot just try to look the other way and say it's a private matter. It is not. It's gone around the world. There is a poll today that shows, asking, should the monarchy be abolished? 50% of people say it shouldn't, only 50%, and 29% say it should. That's nearly 1 in 3 people. That is very high. It's not usually as much as that. Now, I think the Queen, okay, she's in a way been given a free pass by her grandson, by Harry, who says, look, she didn't say the remark about the skin colour. His relations are very good, but she is head of that firm. She's the boss. She can't just look the other way. Now, privately, I looked at that. I thought, you've learned absolutely nothing. You're going to undermine yourself by trying to do this way, because the allegation of racism is so toxic.
But also, what's toxic is what's happening with Prince Andrew, the Duke of York, and Andrew. I mean, the Buckingham Palace have got to tackle that at the same time, haven't they?
Well, that poll's quite interesting. It shows the popularity of Prince Andrew is at minus 73%. I didn't know anybody could be that unpopular. Look, he has to decide. The Queen has effectively sacked him, stripped him of his public duties. We never see him in public anymore. But the FBI, we know, want to talk to him, not as a suspect, but they want to talk to him about his friendship with the convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein, who was sent to jail for trafficking young girls. We know that Prince Andrew spent a lot of time in his house. There have been allegations that that he had sex with underage women. And so far, he's not spoken to the FBI. I think he has to. He doesn't have to go to the United States, you know. He could speak to the FBI anywhere he wants. They'd go and see him. But it has to be dealt with, because at the moment, it is another dark sword of Damocles hanging over the monarchy.
Yeah. I mean, Kevin, the Queen once referred to an annus horribilis. I mean, this is worse, isn't it, in some ways?
I think so. The twin allegations of racism from Harry and Meghan, and the FBI wanted to speak to Andrew over his links to the paedophile and the allegations made by women, which he denies. They're very young women who were sex trafficked. I think that is really, really damaging. But look, the Queen is sheltering Prince Andrew, her son. Why isn't she telling him he must speak to the FBI? Yes, he might have disappeared from public life because he's too much of an embarrassment for him, but he's kept all his titles. And I could see now why Harry was upset he lost a lot of honorary roles with the military, because Andrew's kept his. If you look at the list, he's still a colonel-in-chief of a lot of regiments. She's protecting him. She is harbouring him. If she was responsible as the monarch, and I understand the pressures on her as a mother, but I'm sure my mother, if I was accused of anything, would say, you have to clear your name, you have to get it straight, you have to speak to the police. She should be telling Andrew, you have to cooperate. Remember, they want to speak to him as a witness. That's what they want to speak to him to help an inquiry. There are all these women in America who were sexually exploited and abused, and yet he had this friendship with Epstein, staying with him in New York after he'd been convicted of serious sex offences. He'd invited him, sandering him for a shooting party with Ghislaine Maxwell. who is now in prison awaiting trial on other charges. It invited them to Windsor Castle for a big party hosted by the Queen. And yet now he is dodging the FBI questions. He has to answer them. And I think it reflects very badly on the Queen. It doesn't make him do it.
Absolutely right. Kevin, Andrew, thank you very much indeed. Professor Devi Sridhar, thank you as well for your company this morning.
Lots more still to come. You're watching Good Morning Britain on ITV.
See you in a moment.
Morning, here's your chance to win an amazing prize worth over £100,000. And it all starts with £40,000 in cold, hard, tax-free cash. Just imagine having £40,000 paid from our bank account into yours. And talking of yours, we're going to give you one of these to park right outside. It's a brand new VW campervan. This campervan is worth £69,000. Now, it looks ordinary, but it's not. Inside, it can sleep 4 people. It also has a fully fitted kitchen with a fridge, with a hob and a sink. Yep, that's right. You could have one of these parked outside your front door. I'd love you to win, and here's how. For your chance to win a campervan and £40,000, go to the website. Entries cost £2. Text WIN to 62525. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or call 09068 782525. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and phone number to BK10, PO Box 7558, Derby, DE1 0NQ. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 2 p.m. on Friday the 26th of March. Campervan, cash, campervan. Remember, you'll get both. Good luck.
We predict showers. Warm showers. Do you see? Proud sponsors of Good Morning Britain National Weather. Boxed boilers.
Good morning to you. It is all change in the world of weather. It's been largely dry for many of us for the last few weeks, in fact, nearly the last month, but now it is turning wet and it stays that way for the rest of the week. That's down to the jet stream. It's that fast-moving ribbon of air high in the atmosphere. It drives weather systems across our shores, and it's set to bring with it wet and windy conditions. The isobars, the pressure lines close together. Very windy tonight into tomorrow, 60, 70-mile-an-hour gusts of wind. The advice through northern and western coast, big waves, stay away because they could be very dangerous. This is the scene we're waking up to. A lot of rain first thing this morning. That means a lot of spray on our roads. If you are driving, take care. It's been a while since we've seen this. Because it's been so dry, no real concerns with the risk of flooding. But a dry start this morning for Scotland. The rain will move in here by this afternoon. It turns drier for Northern Ireland. Temperatures arbitrary, really, feeling miserable with the wind and the rain. It stays wet tonight. The rain starts to ease, blustery showers into tomorrow when it's set to be a windy start.
For the weather where you are in detail, go to itv.com/weather.
Wednesday, 10th of March, 2021. Live from Television Centre in London. This is Good Morning Britain with Susanna Reid and Ranveer Singh.
Good morning, Britain. Just after 8 o'clock, the headlines this morning. The Queen says claims of racism within the royal family will be taken very seriously, but handled in private. The statement from the palace follows allegations made by the Duke and Duchess of Sussex during their interview with Oprah Winfrey.
Well, a short statement with a few key words from the Queen. Some recollections may vary, she says, acknowledging that not everyone in the royal family has the same version of events.
A Metropolitan Police officer has been arrested in connection with the disappearance of 33-year-old Sarah Everard in South London.
The Met Police describing that new detail, one of their own officers arrested, as shocking and deeply disturbing. Sarah Everard was last seen near this spot last Wednesday, filmed on a doorbell camera. The police say they're doing everything they can to find her, but where she is and what happened remains a mystery.
Britain could be hit by another wave of coronavirus if lockdown measures are lifted too quickly. That's according to England's chief medical officer. The warning from Professor Chris Whitty comes amid concerns this morning that ethnic minority groups are at a higher risk of illness and death because of the UK's colourblind vaccination programme.
Yes, the Royal College of Medicine this morning saying that the vaccine rollout as things stand, really disregarding the full impact and the seriousness of the pandemic on ethnic minority groups. And they really feel that there should be a more flexible approach towards getting people onto the high priority list and not just focusing on the age group category.
President Joe Biden is expecting to sign a $1.9 trillion COVID relief bill later today to help reduce poverty in the wake of the pandemic.
It's a bold and ambitious bill which has been described as historic and transformative. It will support some of America's most vulnerable families on low income. And when approved by Congress later today, it will be a significant moment in this country's recovery from the pandemic.
And Piers is not here this morning. The media regulator Ofcom has launched an investigation relating to comments he made about the interview with Meghan and Harry. The watchdog received more than 41,000 complaints about his remarks, and yesterday he made the decision to leave Good Morning Britain.
Right.
So it's a very different programme this morning.
Yes. Are you all right?
Yeah,
It's a big thing, isn't it? It's I mean, you know, it was a shock and it's sort of happened and lots of people will feel very different things about it. Some people will be absolutely gutted this morning because they love the show and they love him in it. And lots of people will be saying, it's about time. You know, lots of people annoyed so many people and lots of people loved him. So there's but you sat there with him for how many years now?
More than 5 years.
More than 5 years.
Presenting partner.
Yeah.
So his departure, obviously, is one of the reverberations that has come from this bombshell Harry and Meghan interview.
And I mean, the fact that he's left this show has made news in America. I mean, I've had text messages from directors in LA saying it's on all the news networks out there. It's, you know, in terms of broadcasting, it's a big story. He's a big character, unique, really, in broadcasting. So, yeah, it's a moment for the show, actually, for all of us this morning.
That's a good way to describe it.
It is a moment.
And the show goes on.
And talking of shows going on,
yes,
actually, the real shows are out in the theatres and in the venues that have been empty for so long.
Going on.
Yeah.
Catapulted from the factory floor in Manchester to the global stage, Russell Watson has had a remarkable career, and of course, he's a singing sensation.
18 months away from the stage, this summer, the man known as The Voice will perform again at the last night of the Heritage Proms, and Russell joins us now. Good morning to you. It's always a sort of thing where, morning, when somebody says, we're definitely going to be doing this, you think, are you sure, you're sure, you're sure? Because we've had so many false starts, haven't we? Are you sure that this can go ahead?
There's always a certain amount of trepidation because there's obviously, you know, there's been quite a few U-turns over the last... By the time I actually get on stage, which I have to say I'm incredibly excited about, but by the time we actually get back on stage, myself and my wonderful musicians, it's going to be around about 18 months since I last performed in front of an audience. So we are, as a group of entertainers, ready to get back on stage now and start to hopefully entertain the nation. I mean, you know, what has been planned by the government, their road back to, you know, getting back to some kind of semblance of normality suggests that we're going to be okay at that particular moment in time. So, you know, we're very much forging ahead with it. We've got promoters who are, you know, right behind the event. It's with Heritage Live as well. So we're going to be performing at some beautiful stately homes, stately mansions. And I'm incredibly excited about it. You know, 18 months of sitting at home playing my guitar.
Well, Russell, what does that do to you? Because, you know, I mean, lots of people have found themselves unable to work. And devastatingly, lots of people will have lost work and really struggling. What is it like for you when your main purpose is to be in front of an audience and that is taken away? And what stories are you hearing from people for whom this is, you know, their 100% livelihood and that's been taken away from them?
Well, one of the biggest things at the moment is, and you can check it out online actually, is Excluded UK, where a huge segment of the entertainment sector has been excluded from receiving any government funding. And I think that's been incredibly difficult. And they were expecting some good news a couple of weeks ago, and it didn't happen. So that has been incredibly difficult. Myself personally, and the people that I know, we're just desperate to get back on stage. I mean, this is what I was, this is what I was born to do. We've all kind of adhered to, what we're supposed to do, and we're just desperate to get back out there again and start entertaining. That's an old picture. Blimey, that boat doesn't fit anymore.
How many people are you expecting to turn up? I mean, how many can you have? How will it work in an audience?
And how confident are people going to be going back into audiences? I mean, I've definitely had a sense during the pandemic that there's a wariness that's crept in. I've got a certain sense of I'm a bit wary being outside around lots of other people. You require people to be really bullish about getting back amongst big crowds, don't you?
Well, we're hoping that the rollout of this new plan is going to kind of quell some of the fears that people might have, and obviously that the vaccination is going to work. We're hoping that that's going to be the case, and we're going to have, as I said before, some kind of semblance of normality. And with that, I think will come, the public will maybe feel a bit more relaxed about it. But we have no idea at the moment. We've no idea how things will be received. We can only hope. We want to get back to normal, and I think most people do want to get back to normal. What that new normal is going to be, I'm not sure, and neither is anybody else. But the bottom line is that we want to get back on stage, and we want to start entertaining people. And those who are, happy to come, we're going to receive them with open arms and put the best show that we possibly can on.
Yeah, and it's been interesting just on the it's the heritage proms. There's obviously been lots of controversy and lots of questions about the kind of wording of the traditional songs that are sung there, Rule Britannia being one of them. Will you still sing those songs? Are you still, you like the traditional songs, even though lots of people have questioned the origin of the wording?
I certainly wouldn't be singing Rule Britannia because I'm not a soprano, so that one's definitely out.
That's lucky.
But with regards to, the rest of the repertoire, I'll just be doing my usual stuff. A lot of the Italian arias will be in there. I'm not sure there's any controversy with Ness and Dorma yet. But
I mean, in terms of the actual issue around it, if there was something that was controversial around one of the proms, songs that was offered to you, would you say no, or would you do it?
It depends what the controversy was, but then by the same rule, I'm a singer, not a politician, so that's something that I've never really gotten into. So if somebody was to say to me it's inappropriate to sing this song, of course I would look at it and say, OK, fair enough. But so far, nobody's actually said that about any of the repertoire that I perform. So as I say, more than anything at the moment, the message here is, that musicians need to get back out there and working. It's okay for a lot of people, they're out there, they're working, or they're on the furlough. A lot of people in the industry aren't on furlough. A lot of people aren't working. And so the opportunity to get back on stage is massively appealing to us all. Of course it is.
Yeah, of course it is. Russell Watson, thanks very much indeed for being with us this morning. We have been very lucky to carry on working.
Well, yeah, lots of people have. Yeah, absolutely. It's, yes, as I've been reminded, I did Strictly during the pandemic, of course. Yes, but all of those things, You made me say that.
Did you do? Who's you made me say that? The voices in your head.
Yeah. But that's the thing, though, because it's not just about someone like Russell. Obviously, has made lots of money and can, withstand that. It's everybody who works in the background, all the freelancers, all the, all the runners, all the producers, everybody who need, who's totally out of work.
Have you got over Strictly? Yeah.
It lasted a week. I was down for a week and I'm fine.
And then you bounced back?
Yeah, bounced back. Everyone keeps asking me if I'm still dancing. Of course, not.
No.
No. Right, still ahead on Good Morning Britain. As Professor Chris Whitty warns, there is a significant risk, he thinks, associated with the upcoming easing of restrictions. We're going to be joined by Transport Secretary Grant Shapps at 8:30 about whether, you should be booking a summer holiday or not.
Well, we need vaccination passports. And what does he think about the confusion over testing in schools? Now, though, let's get the news, travel and weather where you are. See you in a moment.
Hello, I'm Faye Barker with the headlines in London. The arrest of a Met police officer in connection with the disappearance of Sarah Everard has been described as shocking and disturbing. The 33-year-old went missing a week ago in South London. The serving police officer was arrested in Kent last night. A woman's also being questioned on suspicion of assisting an offender. The arrests come as police focus their search around a block of flats in Clapham. Westminster Abbey's Poets' Corner will open as a new COVID-19 vaccination clinic this morning. It'll provide up to 2,000 jabs each week. And the Hampton Court Flower Show is due to go ahead in July after it's hoped all restrictions are lifted. Looking at the Tube, there are minor delays on the Circle Line anti-clockwise, delays too on the Hammersmith and City Line. Let's check weather. Here's Sally.
Dentec Temporary Tooth Repair Kit sponsors the local weather on Good Morning Britain.
Hello there and a very good morning to you. So all in all, a pretty grotty day out there. We have a wet and windy scene ahead of us. Outbreaks of rain on and off throughout the day. Some breaks at times, but some of those outbreaks a little bit heavier. And those winds increasing throughout the day into the afternoon and the evening as well. Maybe gusts of 40 miles per hour by mid-afternoon and a bit colder than yesterday. See you later on. Cheerio.
That's it. Now back to Susanna and Ranbir.
Still to come on the programme, Buckingham Palace has sought to draw a line under the damaging racism claims made by the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Does that go far enough? And can they deal with it in private? We'll be discussing that next. You're watching Good Morning Britain on ITV. Lorraine is here at 9.
Morning. How you all doing? Okay?
Yeah, it's a bit different this morning, Lorraine, I have to be honest.
It's very quiet, very calm. Tell you what, he will be missed. I know that Piers divided opinion. Of course he did. You know, there was that Marmite factor. But sometimes you'd hear people say, oh, I don't like him. But what's he saying? You know, it was that kind of thing, wasn't it, a little bit? So yes, it will be a lot quieter and a lot calmer. But like I say, he definitely will be missed. He brought something quite extraordinary. I don't think breakfast television will ever be the same again, that's for sure.
I think unique is the word to describe Piers Morgan.
Absolutely.
You either loved him or, you know, in some cases, people hated him. Hugely popular with many viewers, hugely controversial, many critics, but a big presence.
Huge presence. And actually, you know what? A very loyal friend is all I would say as well. You know, anybody that's ever been in trouble and that has needed his help, he has been there. So you have to take your hat off to him and wish him well for the future and whatever he decides to do.
We know from his history that when he leaves a job, it makes news.
Yes.
It becomes a big news story, and we're absolutely, all of us, including Piers, at the heart of that.
Yeah. I know, it's quite
this
remarkable,
morning.
isn't it? You could not make it up. As my old boss used to say, you couldn't make it up. And you certainly couldn't. Right, let me tell you what's coming up at 9. Kaiser Chiefs Ricky Wilson is going to be here to tell me why he's heading back, actually, to his artistic roots in a delightful way. Also, 25 years on from Dunblane, I'm going to be talking to the inspirational brother who's continuing to campaign so that this tragedy is never repeated. And as the Queen finally responds to Harry and Meghan, it took a while, it was very short and to the point. We're going to be asking if the monarchy needs a fresh start. See that and loads more at 9 o'clock.
Lorraine, thanks very much indeed.
Right, let's talk about these
lateral flow tests.
Yes. So we were talking about it earlier because, of course, schools have gone back this week and there is already some issue around what happens if somebody tests positive in a school. So the point is this, that the policy at the moment, and Dr. Hillary's here to comment on it because we were talking about it earlier. Just to clarify, so the policy is that if there's a positive lateral flow test done at secondary school, so those rapid tests that you get done, if that comes out as positive for a pupil, then you have to go back and you have to go and get the PCR test, which is the much more sort of accurate test. Now, at the moment, if that test, the more accurate one, comes out as negative for that person, so it says you don't have COVID, at the moment, you still have to isolate and possibly the class has to isolate. Now, that seems a little bit counterintuitive to most people, and we've had a GP, Rachel Clark, who's very vocal, saying that's happened in her school to one of the children in her class.
The situation is different if the lateral flow test is done at home, because if that test is positive and then a subsequent PCR test is negative, the pupil is released from isolation.
Why?
The Department of Education says they are taking this approach because tests conducted under supervision at school are less likely to be inaccurate. Dr. Hillary, I don't think I'm the only one confused here.
Well, a lot of people will be confused, and it doesn't really make much logical sense. The PCR test is the gold standard test. This is the one that is very much more reliable than the lateral flow test. There will be false positives in the lateral flow test, perhaps not many, perhaps only 3 in 1,000. But if you then do a PCR test and it's negative, then it really makes it clear that it's a negative, it's a false positive lateral flow test. So, you know, I think there needs to be clarity here. Otherwise, you're going to have a lot of parents saying, do you know what? I'm not going to go along with this voluntary lateral flow testing at all because it's so confusing. There needs to be consistency. And if a lateral flow test is positive and someone's sent home, do the PCR test, even if it's necessary under supervision. And if that supervised PCR test is negative, then I think that pupil should be allowed to go back to school.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
so
a lot of people
you're taking issue with the Department of Education's policy here?
I am in this instance, yes.
OK.
And so are many of my medical colleagues.
Right, that's really interesting. And what it suggests is that a test taken under supervision at school, a lateral flow test, is likely to be more accurate.
Depends who's doing it, doesn't it? I mean, if it's a trained nurse, if it's a trained healthcare professional, it might be slightly more reliable.
And we're saying it's more reliable because of the sort of depth at which you poke
exactly,
yourself.
Exactly,
you know.
and making sure that there's no contamination of the material that you're using. However, you know, parents should be able to be shown how to do this just as well. It's not a major feat of intelligence to do a test well. It does take a good technique, but it's perfectly doable, and it's in the interest of your own child to do it properly. Otherwise, it's not worth doing at all.
Yeah, OK.
All right, Dr. Hillary, thanks very much indeed for that. Right, let's go back to the royal interview. The palace has sought to bring to an end a turbulent few days for the monarchy, releasing a statement expressing the Queen's concern over those allegations of racism made by the Duke and Duchess of Sussex.
They added that the issues will be dealt with privately by the royal family. In a moment, we're going to speak to the Labour MP Clive Lewis and the royal biographer Angela Levine. First, let's speak to Princess Diana's former butler, Paul Burrell. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
What did you read into the Queen's very short, but actually quite informative statement? There seemed to be a lot of emotion in it, actually.
Yes, it's a very uncomfortable time for the Queen, very uncomfortable time for the country. Her Majesty's responded sharply and I think succinctly, and she said that this will be dealt with in private, and that's the way the palace deals with these things. She will investigate it. It's a serious complaint to make against the royal family, racism. I personally, during my 21 years with the royal family, have never seen any evidence of racism. In fact, quite the reverse. Her Majesty's dedicated her reign to her Commonwealth. And Her Majesty does not
say,
see...
Paul, quite rightly, that if you would not have heard racism necessarily because you wouldn't be the subject of it. So therefore, how would you know? But I'm just putting that point forward because, yes.
That's how I know.
Yeah, I think, I mean, in all of the discussions, of course, it has been pointed out that if the Duchess of Sussex felt that it was racist, then that has to be taken seriously as an allegation of evidence of racism, of course. And it is being taken seriously, Paul, because it is going to be investigated and dealt with.
So it should.
And I wonder whether this claim that it's going, you know, in the statement, it's going to be dealt with privately, that I just don't think that's conceivable, is it? Because people are speculating about who it is. It's very important if it turns out to be exactly as Prince Harry and Meghan describe it. It's important that we know that there is accountability. I mean, you know, we talk about transparency and accountability. You know, this is one of those occasions when that has to be done publicly, doesn't it?
Well, yes, it does. But, you know, this interview was a masterclass in interview technique, and it was edited very carefully. And I personally feel that we don't know the full story behind this racism comment. We don't know who said it. We don't know in what context it was said. All of that has to be explored, and I think it should be done in privately, and perhaps the findings of Buckingham Palace will become public.
Well, it's interesting when the statement says that recollections may vary, which suggests that an effort has already been made to speak to somebody about this, who has then given a different version of that scenario.
But there are inconsistencies in the interview too, because Meghan has different recollections to what Harry has. Meghan said it happened during her pregnancy. Harry said it happened before then. Meghan said that she was married before the wedding in the St George's Chapel, and that doesn't seem to be true as well. But all of this will be investigated by Her Majesty, and it is a family affair for her. I think Her Majesty has enough on her plate at the moment. She's worried about her husband in hospital. There's a pandemic raging. She has problems with Andrew. Everybody seems to bring their problems to the Queen's feet. And I feel terribly sorry for Her Majesty, because she is our Queen and she's our head of state. And
she's also incredibly capable. And my goodness, hasn't she dealt with an enormous number of challenges over her decades as monarch?
And, people are always asking me, what would Diana think? What would Diana say? And I think it's relevant to say that Diana would have one arm around William and one arm around Harry. She would want them both to be happy. She wouldn't want them to be divided. She'd want them to stand together. And Diana was a monarchist. She believed in the monarchy. And she wrote a letter to me the year before she died. And in it, she said, "I just long to hug my mother-in-law and tell her how deeply I understand what goes on inside her." And she also said, "I so want the monarchy to survive." And the monarchy must survive because it's very important to our country. It underpins who we are.
It's interesting you say that. I mean, there's so much more to dig around on this, but, the sort of polling suggests that, majority of young people, 18 to 24, who are, of course, the future generation, actually think that they were treated unfairly. And that will last, that lasts with you, your feelings about whether the monarchy is relevant to you, what they do for the country, whether they're worth paying for. So many, the ricochet out of this could be quite catastrophic. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Let's go to Clive and Angela too. Clive, to you, it's this issue of varying recollections, say, which is what's being said in the statement. Is that a problem in a way when we're talking about how one experiences racism?
Yes. I think one of the things that I'm loath to do is kind of coming at this from the kind of the personal angle. For me, this is about an institution. And I think one of the reasons why this has resonated with so many people is because it reflects something that they have experienced themselves. If you think about the fact that in many walks of life, there are many different classes, nationalities, racial backgrounds that, have only just recently gained entry into certain institutions. And so I think, they've been excluded by law sometimes for a long time. So I think this is touched on a nerve which runs through our country. Black Lives Matter, Floyd George and his death. I think what you can see here is that people are asking questions about the mirror that it's held up to us, the country, and what do our institutions reflect. Now, clearly, there will be people who may have views inside the royal family, which I may find distasteful, even offensive. But this is, I think, not so much about the individuals. For me, it's more about the institutions and their fitness for purpose in the 21st century in our democracy.
Angela Levine, you know Prince Harry to a certain extent. You've written about him a lot. He has said, we heard from Paul Burrell there about what would Diana think. Diana is sort of at the heart of everything here, really, because he has repeatedly said he does not want history to repeat itself. He wants to protect his wife from the sort of treatment that his mother received. But also there is another element here, of course, hugely significant, which is that, his wife is a mixed race woman. and he feels an added responsibility because of that. What do you make of the interview and Buckingham Palace's now sort of statement that they're going to deal with all of this privately?
Yes. Well, when I was interviewing Prince Harry for biography of him, he felt very strongly that his mother was looking down on him from heaven and was guiding him as to what to do. And he was aware of it and wanted to follow in her footsteps. At the engagement interview, he said as well that Diana would have absolutely been best friends with Meghan and has jumped up and down for joy. So you're absolutely right. She is always in his head, as she is in William's, but he doesn't articulate it so much. And I was very disappointed that anybody could feel racist and would ruin their lives. I mean, it is a horrific thing to do, but I think there is a difference between making a racist remark and disagreeing. And I think that we need to have a look at that line quite carefully, because there have been some accusations, I'm not saying by Meghan, but some people, that if you disagree with them, then you are automatically racist. And I think it's very important that we avoid that. And I think that the Queen has very good judgment, and she will think about it carefully, talk to people herself. She's not having anyone else get involved in this. She is going to do the question and have people come to her, and she will come out with a sound judgment, I'm quite convinced.
It's quite interesting, isn't it? The sort of feeling that seems to come across is that there is still a great deal of affection and respect for the Queen, but that doesn't actually filter down now to anybody else in the family. And that, for the future of the monarchy, is an extremely huge problem, isn't it? And I think that this interview has certainly lifted the lid on the fact that we're paying millions of pounds to essentially a facade. You know, what we see from what they say, if we are to believe what they said in that interview, it is a facade. We pay for what it all looks like. And actually, on the inside, they're sort of rattling around, all deeply dysfunctional and deeply unhappy. And do we really want that to represent our country anymore? Is it relevant to the future generation of this country, the multicultural future? You know, young people have their own voice these days. We don't live in the 60s where we have 3 channels on telly and we don't have Instagram. And, you know, these days, everybody wants their own voice, Angela. I mean, it does seem that it's created that huge gap between what they do and what the country really is about.
I can't agree with you. I think the monarchy is the most respected one in the world. And I think that if you have seen the other senior members, how they have handled the pandemic, reaching out to people, going around thanking them very much, make a huge difference. Harry did this too. I went with him to so many engagements, and he would go up, especially people who were damaged psychologically or physically, and he would say a few words to them, and I would go up and speak to them afterwards, and they say, he's changed my life.
But the thing is, they'll still be able to do, the point being that they're stepped back from the royal family, they may even be stripped of their titles, and they can still have that impact on the world, can't they? They don't need, it clearly, it just shows from the interview, they don't actually need to be in the royal family anymore in order to have an impact on people's lives, and that's sort of the point that's being made, isn't it?
No, I don't think that's true.
No.
If you watch people who are intimately engaged with the royals, even for a few minutes, they are changed. They will stay overnight to see them. They like the glamour, they like the mystery, they like who they are and what they're doing. And I think they see that they work very hard, not just for British, but for the Commonwealth too.
Okay, Clive, I just want to, just before we let you all go, Clive, the fact of the matter is the monarchy is huge. You know, I mean, it's beloved by millions of people. And what the monarchy does and how it behaves and how it treats people, as Angela says, you know, people feel that they're sort of touched and their lives are changed sometimes by their interactions with the monarchy. Other people, Harry and Meghan, feel their lives have been changed negatively. I mean, where does this leave the monarchy, our respect for the monarchy, our love for the monarchy because they have raised questions which have led to fallouts that we're all feeling.
So, yeah, look, do I think Prince Harry isn't capable of acts of kindness, of the Queen, of doing good? Of course they are, but this isn't about the individuals. I mean, of course the story is about the individuals. It's a soap opera of a family, and like many families, they're dysfunctional. Our family, you know, all families have an element of dysfunctionality to them, and this is one of them. And this one also has something else tied into it, which is racism. How many other people have come back with a person from another background, a black person, a black partner, and had an experience with their family where someone has said something? This is very common. But what it does, because this is at the heart of one of the key structures at the heart of our society, I think it tells us that actually this isn't about individuals, it's about an institution. And it's also about our media. Is it fit for purpose? The way it's operated, the way it's treated Meghan Markle. I think there are serious questions around that. So look, we live in a democracy, and I think the decision about what any change looks like, how we're governed, should be made by the public, not the royal family, not politicians like me, but by the public. And they've never been asked that. We live in a democracy, but have we ever been asked how we want to be governed? So I think ultimately this will have long-term implications. We won't see them immediately, but you know, that might not be a bad thing.
Clive Lewis, thanks very much indeed. Angela Levine, Paul Burrell, thank you very much indeed as well. Let's speak, talking of democracy, let's speak to a government minister now. Grant Shapps is the Transport Secretary. Mr Shapps, firstly, before we get into all of these thorny issues, the last time I remember speaking to you on this programme, you had mentioned your dad was being treated for COVID. And I just want to, you know, all of our viewers will be concerned and will want to just ask how you're doing, how your dad's doing.
That's really, really kind of you. Well, actually, I think at the time I hadn't spoken to him for a few days, and he was not in a good way in a COVID ward. I mean, he's 89, as you may recall. He's out of the COVID ward, and actually after 3 months out of the hospital and into rehab. So fingers crossed, and he's certainly doing a lot better than when I last spoke to you, which is a huge relief to
that is an enormous relief. That is an enormous relief. I want just to talk to you about Harry and Meghan. I mean, the Prime Minister doesn't want to address it, apart from, you know, for a brief couple of comments.
PMQs today, he may have to, possibly.
Well, you do have to address it, don't you, as a government? Because, you know, this is the institution that so many people look up to and respect and love and are concerned about. The comments that Harry and Meghan made cannot be ignored. And we've heard from Buckingham Palace that the inquiry is going to be kept private, but I just wonder whether you think that that is acceptable, actually.
Yeah, well, first of all, I wish Harry and Meghan well, and they've made their decisions and choices and pursue their life as they're doing. I did catch most of the interview, but I think probably rather disappointingly for you, there's a long-running convention that cabinet ministers don't sort of comment on a royal family individual business, because actually we have a constitutional monarchy. We've got a queen who's, next year will have her platinum jubilee, 70 years on the throne. I think she does a tremendous job. What happens with each of the individual family members is not something that I or any other cabinet member would want to get into.
Except a member of your government, Minister Lord Goldsmith, has commented on it. Harry is blowing up his family. What Meghan wants, Meghan gets. Is that a convention that doesn't apply to all ministers?
Well, as I say, cabinet ministers, I think, very much won't want to be drawn into this, because, I mean, actually, the palace themselves have put out a statement. It stands on its own. People will be able to judge if they watch the interview or didn't, or read the palace statement. I don't think there's really much that I or anybody else in the cabinet can really add to that. I don't think it will help. I mean, people are welcome to have debates about this. You were just doing it on your programme a moment ago. I don't think it really adds much to have cabinet ministers coming along and weighing in on this, other than to say I think the Queen does a terrific job. And what's noticeable is everybody agrees, including people, including in that interview, that the Queen does a terrific job. And that's the constitutional part of this.
Grant Shapps, shall we talk a bit about what's going to potentially happen to foreign travel? Because I think that for most people, the idea of having a summer holiday abroad is deeply tantalising. But of course, Greece now have opened their borders and said that from May the 14th, we will welcome British tourists. And yet, Chris Whitty is warning of a potential third wave. What, obviously, you represent, you know, and you talk to the transport industry and air travel. It's deeply important for that industry that we all get back on our flights and so on. Where do you stand on this? Vaccine passports, how is this going to... Can we have a summer holiday, essentially? And should we be booking them?
The travel sector's obviously had a terrible time of it. But of course, people are desperate to get a break after the year we've had. The answer is, I've got something called the Global Travel Task Force set up right now. What we're doing is looking into all these questions in order to be able to report back. So 2 dates for the diary. The 12th of April is when the Global Travel Task Force will report back on the practicalities of restarting international travel. And it won't be legal until, at least this is the earliest date, the 17th of May. That's step 3 of the unlock, before people will be able to travel abroad. And that's the earliest possible date. So it doesn't matter whether other countries say, yes, you can come. It wouldn't be legal to go and take that holiday until then.
So would you say that is it sensible to book a holiday, say, for June or July?
Or for the 17th of May?
Well, what I was going to suggest to people is it's not too long now till the 12th of April when we'll be able to describe what we think the way forward is. And just to explain the complexity of this, we know that the UK has this sort of world-leading rollout of vaccines. 43% of adult populations now being vaccinated, which is incredible. But there's nowhere else in major economies and nowhere else in Europe at all that have got to those sorts of levels. So one of the things we're going to have to look at is how vaccinated are the destination locations. And of course, children won't be vaccinated because it hasn't even been tested on children yet. So what's the role of testing in all this as well? So there are quite a few different things we need to work through. And the 12th of April will give people a lot of the answers that they're looking for. And it won't for the 7th.
Okay, so we're writing that in our diaries as you speak. Grant Shapps, why have we spent 22 billion on a test and trace system where there is no clear evidence that it has contributed to a reduction in coronavirus infection levels?
I saw that report this morning. I thought it was pretty extraordinary, and your viewers can judge for themselves. 9.1
well, it's from
million
the House of
people.
Commons Public Accounts Committee.
Yeah, well, it doesn't mean that immediately you accept just the headlines of it. Listen to this: 9.1 million people who otherwise would have been walking around spreading coronavirus because they're individuals who'd had it, were contacted by Test and Trace and required to self-isolate. They're contacting over 93% of people, whether or not the contact details of the primary contact has been passed on. That's pretty successful in my book.
We had a problem the other day where you had one individual that it took weeks for you to track down. One individual. I mean, you know, this is a multi-billion-pound test and trace system. The report said there is still no clear evidence to judge its overall effectiveness. There's no clear evidence yet. It is unclear whether its specific contribution to reducing infection levels, as opposed to the other measures introduced to tackle the pandemic, has justified its costs. And I just point out, nurses will be looking at that and looking at the fact that consultants have been paid thousands of pounds a day and wondering why they, the nurses who have sat by patients' beds throughout this pandemic, they only get a 1% pay rise, which in many cases amounts to a pay cut.
So taking the first part and then the second part of your question. First of all, look, one individual was located, even though they've made a mistake and hadn't filled in their details. That to me is the success of the system rather than the failure of the system. And you know, these variants that we're also worried about, the South African variant, the Brazilian variant, because we've got this test and trace system in place, there've only been 285 cases of the South African variant and only 6 of the Brazilian one, because we're finding the people and helping them to isolate. Just yesterday, 1.5 million people received tests, including my kids, my twins who are at school. They wouldn't be able to go back to school without this test and trace system. So I just think they've got it wrong.
Money well spent, do you? Nick McPherson, who was the permanent Secretary to Treasury, has said the win for the prize of the most wasteful and inept public spending programme of all time. The extraordinary thing is that nobody in government seems surprised or shocked, and you meeting out that. You don't seem surprised or shocked that billions, 22 billion and rising, has been spent on something that he says is the most wasteful programme spending in history.
So let me ask you this. What do you think would have happened if 9 million people weren't aware that they had coronavirus because they didn't have symptoms but were called up? If those people weren't called up and didn't know, what do you think might have happened? What might have happened with the South African variant, where we've got concerns over how well the vaccine will work? The answer is you would, of course, be in a much, much worse position. And here's an absolute fact. If I didn't have that, if that test and trace system didn't exist, we wouldn't be having a flow of goods in and out of the country from Dover to Calais, the so-called short straits. So far, we've used test and trace to test 1/3 of a million lorry
so
drivers,
worth every
without which we
penny
wouldn't be able
at the
to
same
have them
time as
cross.
nurses are getting effectively a pay cut.
Yeah, let me address that, because you quite rightly, and as you pointed out at the beginning, I've been speaking to doctors and nurses every single day for the last 3 months, I think. So with my dad in hospital, so I absolutely get this point. And look, I think they've done an unbelievable job. It is a fact in this coronavirus that we know that 700,000 people have lost their jobs so far, that millions more are on furlough, and vast swathes, everybody else apart from doctors and nurses, are going to have pay freezes this year, including people who've been heroes in this pandemic.
We're
So
going
the
to have
fact
to
we're
leave
looking
it
at a
there,
pay
Grant
rise
Shapps, I'm
is
afraid
good
to say.
news.
We're going to have to
Sure.
leave it there, I'm afraid. Thank you so much. 8:47. Plenty more to come. You're watching Good Morning Britain on ITV.
Morning. Now, with spring just around the corner, I've got a prize that will set you up for the months to come. And it all starts with £40,000 in cash.
Just imagine ITV transferring 40 grand into your bank account this year.
What with holidays being in short supply of late, this is the prize that could change all that. Fancy heading off in your very own VW camper van? In fact, it's this one. Oh no, don't worry, you're not included.
It comes with everything you need to make it your home from home. 2 double beds, a sink, hob and fridge freezer, plus tables and chairs for dining in or out.
This prize is worth over £100,000. That's £40,000 in tax-free cash and this brand new VW camper van. You win the lot. Come on, Ted, let's go.
For your chance to win a camper van and £40,000, go to the website. Entries cost £2. Text WIN to 62525. Text cost £2 plus one standard network rate message, or call 09068 782525. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and phone number to BK10, PO Box 7558, Derby, DE1 0NQ. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 2 p.m. on Friday the 26th of March. Good luck.
Let us talk to Harmony Rose. We, of course, know her. She had meningitis. She lost her limbs, but her positivity is something that inspires us all. And Harmony Rose, it's lovely to see you and Mum this morning. You have big news for us, don't you?
Yeah.
Tell us what it is.
I've got a new hand.
Oh! Wow. That is beautiful. Now, when did you get that?
Not last Thursday, the Thursday before.
Wow. And what has that enabled you to do, Harmony Rose?
Paint my nails.
Paint your nails, lovely. And what else?
Pick up things and yeah.
And hold your mum's hand.
Yeah, holding hands. Holding hands.
Well, Mum, for you, that is a breakthrough, isn't it?
Yeah, it's amazing. Like, we always hold her arm, and it's just nice to be able to hold her hand like everybody else, I suppose.
Yeah, I like grabbing her.
Oh, I bet you do. And now you can do lots of grabbing and lots of hand holding. Do you know what, Harmony Rose? We wanted to get you on the programme to celebrate that this morning. It's just always lovely to see you. Have a fabulous day, and thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
I love grabbing and squeezing my arm, my favourite thing to do.
We love you, Harmony Rose. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. It is 8:54. Good Morning Britain is back tomorrow from 6, but it's time to join Lorraine.